Hello everyone, today we will learn about another case. The case of Kristine Larson. Love is a wonderful feeling about which books are written, music is created, and films are made. However, if it is the twisted love of a sick person, it can ruin many lives. The treachery of some villains goes beyond all boundaries. A criminal can hide so effectively that, until the very last moment, it remains unclear whether he is crying sincerely in grief or shedding crocodile tears while enjoying his bloody triumph. The incident we will discuss today occurred in St. Paul Park, Minnesota, USA, just half an hour's drive from Minneapolis. Here, a close-knit local community of about 5,000 people transformed their town into a beautiful, shining paradise for the holidays, with every decorated house radiating warmth and comfort. It was in this town that the couple Doug Larson and Deborah Tilson lived. On February 24, 1988, their daughter Kristine was born, becoming the youngest of their 4 children. Notably, they had taken a significant break before her birth. The older siblings helped their parents care for Kristine. From the very beginning, she stood out among the other children due to her energy and mobility. Kristine was always like this and maintained her zest for life until her last breath. In 2004, at the age of 16, she began dating a boy named Zachary Otis Matthews. Their relationship was going well, and by 2006 they had a son named Darian. Kristine and Zachary moved in with her parents during her pregnancy to receive support from her mother and loved ones. She spent nearly all her free time in the Larson household, and they grew very close. For Kristine, her son became everything. She centered her life around motherhood and household chores. Although Zachary initially seemed like a loving and caring father, after a few months of living together, they both realized they wanted more independence and moved out from Kristine's parents' home. Zachary grew up in a troubled family with an alcoholic father who regularly abused him both physically and emotionally. Nevertheless, his difficult childhood did not make him angry. Instead, he was determined to build healthy relationships and raise normal children, viewing his parents as an example of what he did not want to repeat. Kristine never used illegal substances and did not like alcohol or noisy parties. She avoided dubious company and anything associated with crime. Prior to giving birth, she focused entirely on motherhood but also thought ahead, not wanting to depend on her parents financially. She aimed to explore various fields in order to identify the most promising direction for her career. Therefore, she enrolled in bartender school and planned to attend nursing school afterward. Unfortunately, all these ambitious ideas were doomed to failure. On the evening of December 19, 2007, Kristine planned to bake Christmas cookies with her mother. It was a family tradition to bake signature cookies according to her grandmother's recipe every New Year's holiday. In the late afternoon, Kristine intended to return home to do this, but she had been out running errands during the day. Her mother stayed at home with her husband and adult children, waiting for Kristine's return. Evening fell, but she had still not arrived. They tried to call her, but were unable to reach her. Deborah was concerned but wanted to give her daughter a little more time. Perhaps she was delayed for a good reason and would return soon. Unbeknownst to Deborah, while she was worried and trying to contact Kristine, about half an hour away from their home, a man reported to the rescue service that he had seen a car burning in an alley near his house at around 8 p.m. Initially, the man called to report only the burning car, but then he grew curious about what was happening and examined the scene more closely. Just a couple of minutes after his first call, he made a second call, stating that there appeared to be a person inside the car. When firefighters and police arrived on the scene, it was too late. They found a charred body inside the vehicle. Although the face was badly damaged, it was evident that the victim was female. Furthermore, there were signs of strangulation on her neck and blood vessels around her eyes, indicating she had experienced prolonged and severe compression of the throat. The police observed that the victim was not wearing a jacket or shoes, which seemed strange given that December 19th in Minnesota was very cold. Anyone dressed like that would likely freeze. The authorities suspected that the victim might have been killed elsewhere, and that the car had been set ablaze to hide the traces of the crime. Examination of the burned vehicle led fire experts to conclude that the fire had started in the back seat. A nearly completely charred phone book was found there. During the investigation, a handbag was discovered containing a driver's license in the name of Kristine Larson, along with a photo of her with her son. An empty child's seat was also found in the back seat, raising concerns about the child's whereabouts and safety. The man who reported the burning car spoke with detectives. Their information helped clarify the timeline of events. According to initial investigation, the victim had sustained a blow to the head from a blunt object, after which something resembling a cord or wire had been wrapped around her neck, leading to her death. It was obvious that this was a brutal, premeditated murder, and the arson of the car was intended to hide these traces to confuse the investigation. Meanwhile, the family of Kristine was still at home, perplexed. Why hadn't Kristine returned? Her mother was still waiting for her daughter's help in making cookies. However, Kristine's stepfather, Daniel Tilson, tried to calm everyone down. He reminded his wife that their daughter was a 19-year-old girl who wanted to go for a walk and have fun, especially since they were talking about a very energetic, spontaneous person. So, they simply turned on the TV and sat down to watch, thinking that their daughter was spending time with friends. Both parents had to go to work, so the couple decided to forego the holiday cookies that evening and cook them later. However, when Deborah turned on the TV to watch the news before going to bed, they saw a report about a young girl found dead in a burning car. They didn't even think it could be Kristine. Deborah and Daniel looked at each other, almost in unison, thought how terrible it was to be the parents of a daughter who died in such a horrible way. Then, they turned off the bad news and went to bed. Around 3 a.m., there was a knock on the Larsons' door. When they opened the door, police officers from the Minneapolis Police Department stood on the threshold. The officers entered the kitchen, where one of them delivered the tragic news. Another unpleasant piece of news for them was the disappearance of Kristine's son, Darian. The police had searched the child in the home of Kristine's relatives, but he was not there. No one had the slightest idea where the baby was at that moment. During the day, he had been visiting his father's house. To everyone's relief, the police officers were able to contact Zachary, and it turned out that Darian was with him. He did not understand why he was being disturbed at such a late hour and thought that it could be about Kristine. He explained that they were supposed to meet that day, go shopping together, but since she had disappeared and ignored all his calls, he spent the day in despair. When Deborah conveyed the terrible news to him over the phone, he burst into hysterical tears. Somehow, Zachary managed to calm down. Deborah invited him and the child to visit them at their house. They wanted to unite to cope with the consequences of this terrible tragedy. Zachary immediately agreed. The police wanted to talk to the parents of Kristine to clarify the circumstances of the last days of Kristine's life. They provided valuable information, revealing that Kristine and Zachary had broken up 2 months before these events. Although they maintained warm relations for the sake of their child and continued to communicate as friends, they did not live together. Kristine's parents still considered Zachary part of the family. Firstly, he was the father of their grandson and wanted to play a full role in the child's life. Secondly, he had not given up hope of rekindling his relationship with Kristine. They said that the young parents had lived in the family home for quite some time before deciding to move to St. Paul. They rented an apartment located about 15 minutes away by car. However, after the move, the parents began to notice that Kristine was not very happy with her family life. Zachary was drawn to parties and entertainment, which did not align with what the young mother had expected. Despite her modern and active outlook on life, Kristine now wanted a home that offered an atmosphere of peace and quiet to focus on her child. She didn't like that her boyfriend viewed everything differently. He wasn't on the same page with her and was often leaving her to care for the child alone. After a couple of months, Kristine decided to break up with him and return to her family home. Back to the case, according to Deborah, the last time she saw her daughter was around 1 p.m. on that fateful day, December 19th. Kristine had plans until the evening. First, she was going to give her friend a ride to the gas station and then meet Zachary to go for a walk and pick up Darian. This was valuable information for the police, who immediately went to the gas station where Kristine was supposed to meet her friend to fill up the car. The CCTV footage was confiscated, revealing Kristine entering the store and even joking with the seller before meeting her friend. She appeared to be in a good mood, and the footage did not record anything incriminating. The investigators was decided to meet Zachary on the morning of December 20th. He came to the police station voluntarily for a planned conversation. According to his confession, Kristine hadn't even had time to reach him that day. He stated that they had a strong relationship connected by their child. Zachary still maintained a warm relationship with Kristine and her family. Zachary acknowledged that his love for socializing with friends made him seem unstable in Kristine's eyes, but he saw it as a way to relax after work. This was the reason for their breakup. Although they continued to maintain a loving relationship, it somewhat contradicted the words of Kristine's parents, who never mentioned anything about the resumption of Kristine's relationship with Zachary. In fact, on his social media page, he indicated that he was married, even though they never officially tied the knot. Kristine repeatedly asked him to remove this statement, but he refused and hoped that they would restore their relationship and eventually get married. Zachary also stated that in December they had joint plans. Kristine was supposed to come to pick up their son at around 2 p.m. All three of them were going to go to the store for Christmas presents. They also wanted to stop by a festival dedicated to the holiday so that the baby could see everything. Zachary called Kristine at 2:20 p.m. and then several more times, but she ignored him. Then Zachary decided to take the bus with his son to the festival on his own, thinking that as soon as Kristine showed up, she would call, and he would come back. He didn't want to waste time, so he made this decision around 3 p.m., collected the child, and they both left for the festival. The father and son arrived there at about 4 p.m. and stayed for only about an hour. First, the noise bothered the baby. He didn't want to disturb him. Secondly, he didn't want to be there for long without Kristine's company, as she never got in touch. Thirdly, he believed that during this time she could return for the child, and he was waiting for her. According to him, when he returned home, there was no one there. He claimed to have spent the rest of the evening and night waiting until he received an alarming call from his beloved's relatives. His alibi was quickly confirmed since at the festival there were special sheets for registration where attendees had to sign in upon arrival. During the check, Zachary's name was found. Additionally, several witnesses confirmed seeing him and child at the event. Despite initially becoming the main suspect, he was almost immediately ruled out after the news of Kristine's murder. Zachary posted on his social media page that he missed her and would do everything for their son to ensure that the boy smiled, as Kristine would have wanted. While detectives attended the festival and corroborated Zachary's story, they managed to find a new potential clue reported by friends of Kristine. According to them, shortly before her death, Kristine had met a young man named Derek, her new boyfriend. The detectives decided to check the alibi of the former by contacting Derek and arranging a meeting with him at the station. However, they were unable to reach him, which raised suspicion, prompting the police to look for him more actively. It turned out that he had not shown up for work on December 20th, the day after Kristine's death. No one who knew him had seen him since. This seemed like an even stranger coincidence. He never returned for his work shift and did not answer phone calls, making him technically missing. On December 21st, they managed to contact him through his friends, persuading him to come to the police station voluntarily. According to Derek's account, he saw Kristine on December 19th at around 2:15 p.m. He claimed he was walking along St. Paul Park Street near his house when she drove by. His apartment was located just a few minutes' walk from Zachary's. According to the reconstructed timeline, she was heading to her former partner's place to pick up her child. Derek waved at her, and she stopped, confirming that she was indeed going to pick up gifts. They chatted for a short time about an upcoming meeting and decided they could meet later that evening or the next day. Kristine left, promising to call, but then simply stopped getting in touch. Derek confirmed that she seemed fine, with no unusual behavior or appearance. She was excited about the upcoming holidays with her family and in good spirits. The police believed Derek's account since he remained calm, answered questions clearly, and did not raise any suspicion. His words were corroborated when detectives checked the surveillance camera recordings from one of the houses. He accurately described the meeting with Kristine. Derek had indeed left the area and did not seem suspicious. He justified his strange absence from work by stating he was sick, and his management confirmed this. However, this situation confused the detectives. They did not dismiss Derek and did not want to overlook any clues. Given the time intervals Derek indicated, he became the last person known to have seen Kristine alive, thus moving to the top of the suspect list for the murder. They obtained warrants, including permission to check the records of Zachary's phone conversations. The police, however, could not connect Derek to the crime. They were physically in different locations all day, only crossing paths for a few minutes. The investigation simply lacked sufficient information, but detectives noted that near the location where the burning car and body were found, there was an interstate highway equipped with numerous surveillance cameras. The police decided to review any violations or instances of reckless driving reported on December 19th. It turned out that night an unknown person had called emergency services to report reckless driving, describing how an unidentified man was driving along the freeway from Minneapolis towards St. Paul Park. According to the description, the driver resembled an old friend of the detectives, but it was neither Derek nor Zachary, which puzzled the detectives anew. They decided to check Zachary's phone records and quickly discovered that his initial statements about staying home all night with the child were lies. Instead, he had been traveling on the regular highway between St. Paul and Minneapolis. The police knew that, at that time, Zachary was staying with the victim's parents at their invitation, which provided them with a good opportunity to search his apartment without his presence. The first thing that attracted the detectives' attention was the numerous telephone books that Zachary kept in his home for some reason. They were identical to the one found in the back seat of the burnt-out car. Few people kept these books in such quantities, and the coincidence seemed strange. In addition, traces resembling blood spatters were found on the walls in the hallway. A luminol test confirmed that it was indeed blood. Even more stains were found when they checked the bedroom. On Zachary's mattress, there were spatters. The entire apartment was subjected to this test, revealing many places where there were suspicious blood stains. However, the most interesting item was a 4-page letter that was obviously addressed to Kristine but was never given to her. In it, he expressed how much he missed his relationship with her and wanted her back. This was fundamentally contrary to Zachary's initial claims that they were planning to move in together. He even stated that he supported Kristine and was glad she had a boyfriend. This was an obvious lie. He suffered during the separation, which could have made him jealous when he found out about Deke. In fact, he wanted her back from the very beginning. The relationship between them was not straightforward. They often argued and quarreled. Sometimes this even led to calls to the police from neighbors, although it never escalated to violence. Kristine's parents were aware of the heated arguments but did not think Zachary could be dangerous. The next discovery was a pair of boots found in Zachary's closet. They were similar in description to those belonging to Kristine. Interestingly, one of them was missing a lace. The detective speculated that the criminal could have used this lace to strangle her. While the detectives were waiting for the results of DNA tests, they contacted the relatives of Kristine because they thought it was important to keep them informed of their findings. It was possible that Larson family was in mortal danger, living under the same roof as the suspect. When the police informed Daniel and Deborah about this, Zachary was just a few meters away from them, through the wall in his room. It was a difficult situation for the parents of Kristine, but they decided to help the police. After this call, they approached him and said that the police wanted to talk again. They demonstrated all possible restraint and composure to avoid revealing the true purpose of their encounter. Upon receiving this news, Zachary was visibly upset. He expressed that he really wanted the investigation to be concluded and for the criminal to be found. Within an hour, he left and headed to the police station. From the very beginning, it was clear that they did not intend to treat him as a witness. Zachary ended up in the interrogation room, where the police were quite harsh with him. He kept insisting on his version of events, repeating over and over that he attended the festival and was with Darian. But the investigators told him they were aware of his lies and wanted to hear the truth. According to the detectives, they invited him in for questioning because they had discovered that his story was partly fictional. They didn't reveal all their evidence in the hope that the suspect would implicate himself with contradictory excuses. This went on for about 3 hours. When it became clear that their tactics were useless, they produced the letter they found in the apartment. They decided to try to appeal to his emotions, as he in the letter expressed how much he loved her. Contradictions were found in his story. He started making excuses again but seemed increasingly less confident. Eventually, under pressure, Zachary decided to tell a new story. However, it was not at all what the investigators expected to hear. According to Zachary, he went to the store shortly before 2 p.m., hoping to return before his beloved arrived. When he returned with his son, he found Kristine unresponsive in the living room closet, the same place where the police found the shoes during their search. He claimed he was so scared when he found her that he decided to hide the body, fearing legal issues. He understood that this story would not be believed, so his best choice was to transport Kristine by car to the outskirts of the city and abandon her. According to Zachary, he did just that and then walked more than 10 kilometers to his apartment, leaving baby Darian home alone without supervision. According to him, he did not even set fire to the car with the body, so he had no idea what happened after that. All this sounded completely implausible. His trip with the boy did not align with his fabricated story about attending the festival, making it clear that he was lying. It became evident from Zach's words that he was not involved in what happened, yet he appeared at all stages of the massacre. While this was not a confession, the police believed they would now be able to reconstruct the timeline of events from December 19th more accurately. According to the detectives, Kristine had indeed come to her ex's apartment after speaking with her new boyfriend around 2:15 to 2:30 p.m. It was believed that Zachary wanted to discuss rekindling their relationship, but everyone knew that Kristine was not interested in such a conversation, as she had already started dating someone new. Zachary probably didn't know about the relationship, but Kristine confessed to him about her new boyfriend, which provoked a fit of anger. A conflict arose that ultimately led to murder. All this happened just on the other side of the wall from his son, but the child was too young to understand anything. Then, he took Darian and went with him to the Christmas festival by bus, leaving his beloved's body in the apartment. When he returned, he left the child alone and took the body, deciding to find a place to dispose of Kristine's car and cover his tracks. The arson was planned in advance. The fire succeeded, but it did not burn as strongly as he had planned, and there were enough traces of the crime left on the body. The examination showed that the blood found in his apartment belonged to Kristine, and the shoelaces were identified as the murder weapon. His DNA was also found in Kristine's car. On December 24th of that year, Christmas Eve, Zachary was officially arrested and charged with the murder of Kristine Larson. A little less than a year later, in October 2008, the jury found Zachary Otis Matthews guilty of first-degree murder, and he was sentenced to life imprisonment without parole. After that, Darian was handed over to Kristine's parents, who raised him as their own son. Curiously, even the new boyfriend with whom she had a short relationship played a significant role in the child's life. He communicated with him regularly, wanting to remind the boy of what a wonderful person his mother had been. Despite their brief relationship, Derek thought Kristine was a remarkable girl and mourned her deeply. He wanted Darian to never forget his mother. Zachary remains behind bars and has never admitted guilt in Kristine's murder, insisting that he was framed. Therefore, accurately reconstructing what he had to endure leading up to her death, as well as determining the motive for the crime, is not possible. Brenda Michaela Gordillo was born on May 16, 1995, in Catamarca, Argentina. She is the only girl in a family of 3 children, with 2 older brothers, Yvonne and Federico. She also shared an especially close bond with her mother, Florin. She was a bright, organized, and responsible student, known for her friendly personality and ability to mediate conflicts. This aptitude eventually inspired her to pursue a career in psychology. As a child, Brenda participated in activities such as gymnastics, dancing, and acting in school plays, thoroughly enjoying her time on stage. She built many friendships and was well-liked for her helpful advice and understanding. After high school, she was accepted into a prestigious university in Buenos Aires, where she studied psychology with a specialization in negotiation and conflict resolution. A standout student, she consistently earned praise from her professors, who envisioned a bright future for her. She had plans to stay in the capital and build her career there. However, her life took an unexpected turn. During her second-to-last year of college, Brenda received heartbreaking news. Her father had passed away suddenly from a heart attack. The loss deeply affected her family, particularly her mother, who was left alone in their family home. By that time, Brenda's brothers had moved out and started their own families, while she remained in Buenos Aires, completing her degree. After graduating, Brenda returned to Catamarca to live with and support her mother. She found a job and decided to further her education by enrolling in law school at a local university. Returning to student life, she formed new friendships, one of which was with a young man named Naim Vera. Naim was born on June 11, 1999 in Catamarca, into a prestigious and wealthy family with a tradition of practicing medicine. His father was a renowned cardiac surgeon, and his mother ran a private pediatric practice. As the younger of two sons, Naim grew up alongside his brother Jamie, who was his complete opposite. While their parents provided the best possible opportunities for both, Jamie was hardworking and aspired to follow the family tradition by becoming a doctor. Naim, on the other hand, was far more relaxed, self-indulgent, and entitled. Naim impresses with his handsome appearance, modern fashion style, exuding confidence and receiving much love. Many girls at school admired him, and he thrived on the attention. However, in his final years of high school, he began using banned substances and often got into trouble. Thanks to his family's influence, he always avoided serious consequences. Over time, Naim developed a reputation for being arrogant and confrontational. He was a bully, quarrelsome, and prone to violent outbursts. Despite his privileged upbringing, his volatile nature often overshadowed his advantages. In 2018, after graduating from high school, Naim decided to turn his life around. He left behind his reckless behavior, sought treatment for his substance issues, and later gained acceptance into law school. It was during this new chapter of his life that he met Brenda. He was immediately captivated by her, and she was equally drawn to his confidence and bold demeanor. At the time, Brenda was 23, while Naim had just turned 19. The age difference did not bother her, and she embraced his attention. When Brenda and Naim first met, they spent hours talking at a bar. Later that night, they went to an apartment owned by Naim's parents, to which he had access. That evening marked the beginning of their intimate relationship, and from then on, they began seeing each other frequently. For the first time, Brenda experienced what she believed to be true love and radiated happiness. Her friends and family noticed this transformation, often commenting on how joyful she had become. However, none of them had ever met Naim, about whom Brenda talked a lot. Although she frequently mentioned Naim, she only shared his photos from social media with her mother and brothers, casually hinting that he was her future fiancé. Over time, it became obvious that Naim had no plans to introduce Brenda to his family or friends. Their relationship remained confined to the same apartment, and they never appeared in public together as a couple. Brenda thought it was unusual but convinced herself that Naim just needed more time. Privately, she also worried that their age difference made him hesitant. The secret meetings lasted for many months, and she still invested a lot of emotions in this relationship. Even when Naim began to grow distant, she chose to ignore the change in his behavior, clinging to the belief that their connection was still strong. One day, Brenda received a call from an unfamiliar number. The caller identifies himself as Naim's cousin and gives her a dire warning. He claimed that Naim had a violent past and that, if not for the protection of his parents, Naim would have already faced significant legal trouble for his actions. The caller advises her to end the relationship immediately before things get worse. However, she ignores his advice. In mid-February 2019, Brenda found out she was pregnant. The news took her by surprise, but after the initial shock, she felt genuinely happy. She sees this as an opportunity to improve her relationship with Naim, hoping that this will make him more serious and willing to commit to her. When they met again, Brenda shared the news. At first, Naim was silent, but his reaction quickly shifted to anger. He stated that he wasn't ready to become a father and insisted that having a child didn't align with his current plans. He urged Brenda to terminate the pregnancy, promising to cover all expenses. Brenda firmly refused, explaining that she had health issues and that being able to conceive was nothing short of a miracle. Their disagreement escalated, and Naim ended the relationship, saying it was best for them to separate. For a time, they stopped seeing each other but continued exchanging messages on social media. During this period, Brenda confided in a close friend, admitting how much she missed him and expressing hope for reconciliation. She revealed that she had never loved anyone as deeply as she loved Naeem. Towards the end of February, Naeem called Brenda and proposed they meet to have a calm discussion. Brenda was thrilled, convinced that he had reconsidered. She excitedly shared the news with her best friend, who encouraged her and reassured her that everything would work out. They planned to meet on the night of February 28, 2019. That night, she was invited to a classmate's birthday party. After the party, she went to Naeem's apartment and never left again. The following day, Friday, March 1st, Brenda did not attend her university classes, which was highly out of character for her. She had never missed a lecture without a valid reason, and now no one could contact her or determine her whereabouts. Brenda's mother remembered her mentioning the birthday party and saying in advance that she wouldn't be home that night. However, she did not specify whether she would be with friends or her boyfriend. She had planned to go directly to class in the morning, so her mother wasn't initially concerned. It wasn't until later that afternoon, when the university contacted Brenda's family to ask about her absence, that her mother realized something was wrong. Friends and relatives quickly began searching for her. Everyone knew that she wouldn't just vanish without informing someone. At first, there was still hope. Perhaps she was simply spending time with Naeem and had lost track of time. But as relatives began calling around for information, something shocking occurred that changed everything. In that moment, all hope was lost. Brenda was gone forever. At this time, Naeem entered the Catamarca police station, accompanied by his father and 2 attorneys. He stated that he wished to confess to a tragic incident that had occurred the previous night. He was taken to an interrogation room, where he calmly recounted his version of the events. Although visibly distressed, he remained composed and spoke confidently. Naeem explained that he had arranged for a female acquaintance, Brenda, to visit his apartment that evening for an intimate encounter. He mentioned that they had met in this way before, without any commitments or expectations. However, that night, an argument broke out between them, leading Naeem to demand that she leave immediately. The apartment consisted of 2 levels connected by a staircase, and Naeem claimed that during the confrontation, Brenda stepped backward, lost her balance, and fell down the stairs. He stated that he tried to catch her but failed. When he reached her, she was unresponsive. He said he attempted to help her, but it was too late. She had sustained a fatal neck injury from the fall. Panicked and fearing he would be blamed, Naeem made a rash decision to dispose of the body. He dragged Brenda to the terrace, where a large outdoor grill was located. Finding lighter fluid in a cabinet, he poured it over her body and lit a match. The fire ignited immediately, but the flames grew uncontrollably high, producing thick smoke. At this point, a neighbor from a nearby apartment noticed the activity and saw someone grilling late at night. When Naeem saw the neighbor, he waved and smiled, appearing calm and friendly. Later, the neighbor testified in court that Naeem's demeanor seemed normal, so he didn't report anything suspicious. Realizing that the grill couldn't be used to completely destroy the remains, Naeem abandoned the idea and brought the body back inside. He then packed the remains into garbage bags, placed them in boxes, and loaded them into his car. Driving aimlessly, he decided to discard the lower half in a random dumpster he passed. For the upper half, he drove out of the city to a shallow ravine near the roadway. He threw the remains into the ditch, covering them with dirt, branches, and trash. As he headed back to his car, a passing patrol unit stopped to check why his car was parked by the roadside. Thinking quickly, Naeem lied, saying that his girlfriend had called him and he had pulled over to talk. The officers believed him and left. Returning to his apartment, Naeem attempted to clean up but found the task overwhelming. In distress, he called his cousin and confessed everything over the phone. Initially, his cousin believed he was hallucinating or under the influence of a banned substance, but the seriousness of the situation soon became clear. The cousin contacted Naeem's father, who, with the help of attorneys, insisted that Naeem turn himself in to the authorities, hoping it would reduce his sentence. During his confession, Naeem disclosed the locations where he had disposed of the remains. Additionally, security camera footage showed him discarding garbage bags into a dumpster, with his car visible in the background. Even if he had tried to deny it, the evidence against him was irrefutable. Investigators quickly found the second box in the ravine, prompting forensic experts to examine the remains. Their analysis revealed a shocking truth that completely contradicted Naeem's account. Although the body had been severely burned, there were no injuries consistent with falling down the stairs, no broken bones, no significant bruising, and, most notably, Brenda's neck was unbroken. Instead, the autopsy revealed a far more sinister cause of death. The cartilage in Brenda's throat had been crushed, not accidentally but by forceful pressure from bare hands. Her official cause of death was mechanical asphyxiation. She had been strangled. The horror didn't end there. Forensic experts found fabric fibers inside Brenda's mouth, later determined to be from her own scarf. This indicates that it had been forced into her mouth to silence her before the strangulation. Additionally, fresh scratches on Naeem's hands suggested that Brenda had fought back fiercely. The evidence made one thing clear: this was a calculated and deliberate act of violence, not an accident. When Brenda's family and friends were informed of the tragedy, a new detail emerged: her alleged pregnancy, which Naeem had never mentioned. Under questioning, he admitted that Brenda had been pressuring him for weeks, using the pregnancy to influence him. He explained that their relationship had been entirely physical, not romantic, and that there had been no discussions about a future together or starting a family. He claimed that when Brenda revealed she was pregnant, he immediately offered to pay for an abortion, but she refused. This disagreement had sparked several heated arguments. On the night of the incident, Brenda allegedly not only insisted on keeping the baby but also demanded that Naeem marry her. According to Naeem, her demands infuriated him, and, in a fit of rage, he ended her life. However, there was a major flaw in Naeem's story. An autopsy revealed that Brenda was not pregnant. If she had used the pregnancy as leverage, it was an empty claim. Investigators uncovered an even more shocking truth: Brenda had a medical condition that made pregnancy impossible, a fact she had known since her teenage years. So why had she told Naeem she was pregnant? One of Brenda's closest friends explained during questioning that Brenda genuinely believed she was pregnant. She had missed her period, experienced symptoms, and was overjoyed, thinking doctors had been wrong about her condition. When she shared the news with Naeem, he dismissed her claim and cut ties with her. Brenda confided in only 2 close friends about the pregnancy, never saw a doctor to confirm it, and didn't tell her mother. According to her closest friend, she had no intention of manipulating Naeem. She truly believed she was going to be a mother and had started imagining a future with him. Naeem was arrested the same day he turned himself in and shared his version of events. He claimed what happened was an accident. According to him, he panicked and, in his shock, made the horrific decision to dispose of Brenda's body in a brutal way. He also insisted that their connection was purely casual, with no emotional commitment or real relationship. In Argentina, crimes within romantic or domestic relationships are classified as aggravated offenses due to the victim's vulnerable position. Victims typically trust their partner, do not perceive them as a threat, and may have a diminished sense of self-preservation. If the court ruled that Brenda and Naeem had a real relationship, he could face life in prison. However, if he convinced the court it was merely a casual arrangement with no emotional ties, his sentence might be reduced to a maximum of 15 years. Naeem and his legal team, hired by his father, focused on proving this. Naeem's lawyers argued that he and Brenda were never seen together in public, had no shared photos, and had not introduced each other to their families or friends. However, Brenda's family and friends described a different reality. They insisted that Brenda was deeply in love with Naeem and believed he felt the same. She avoided pressuring him or pushing for formal introductions to his family, assuming he simply needed time. One of Naeem's classmates later disclosed that Naeem had never taken Brenda seriously. He enjoyed spending time with her but had been leading her on, giving her false hope. When Brenda told him she was pregnant, he reportedly panicked and became desperate to find a way out. The classmate claimed Naeem had said the baby would never be born or he would end his life. At the time, nobody thought much of his words. However, about a week before the crime, Naeem allegedly approached his cousin, asking if he knew someone who could solve a problem in exchange for money. His cousin dismissed it as a joke and didn't take it seriously. It wasn't until the night of the crime, when Naeem called asking for help to cover up what he had done, that his cousin realized the gravity of the situation. After the tragedy, Naeem's family publicly expressed their condolences to Brenda's loved ones, stating that her loss had devastated their own lives as well. Despite this, his legal team worked to minimize his responsibility, alleging that Brenda had been manipulating and pressuring him. They even accused her of faking the pregnancy to trap him into marriage, claiming she had ulterior motives and saw Naeem as a wealthy and promising husband. Naeem also tried to argue that he acted in a moment of extreme distress, but his defense quickly crumbled. During his first interrogation, he provided detailed descriptions of how he disposed of Brenda's remains, details that were inconsistent with someone allegedly in shock. Additionally, a neighbor's testimony proved damning. The neighbor recounted seeing Naeem grilling on the terrace that night and noted that he appeared calm and composed. The neighbor even remembered Naeem waving hello in a friendly manner, as if everything were normal. The psychiatric evaluation concluded that Naeem was fully aware of his actions at the time of the crime and could be held legally responsible. However, specialists diagnosed him with psychopathic traits, borderline personality disorder, and bipolar affective disorder. Despite these diagnoses, none diminished his legal accountability. Naeem's family was wealthy and well-connected, which could have enabled him to avoid full responsibility. His legal team deliberately delayed the trial, hoping public interest would eventually wane. Brenda's family feared that Naeem might receive a light sentence or even evade justice entirely. Determined to prevent this, Brenda's mother took action. She organized numerous protests and marches, demanding justice for her daughter. Feminist activists also joined the effort, ensuring the case remained in the public spotlight. The trial began in May 2021 and attracted widespread media attention. A key focus of the proceedings was defining the relationship between Naeem and Brenda. His defense attorneys argued that, given his young age, he was not ready for a serious commitment and that his relationship with Brenda was nothing more than a casual fling. If the defense managed to convince the court, Naeem could have received a lighter sentence. Additionally, they sought to prove that the crime was not premeditated, which could have made him eligible for parole within 5 to 7 years. During the trial, Naeem remained cold and detached, showing no remorse for his actions. Following his attorney's advice, he apologized formally to Brenda's family, but his apology came across as insincere and even mocking. On May 14, 2021, Naeem was convicted of aggravated homicide and attempting to conceal the crime. He was sentenced to life in prison without parole and was also ordered to pay Brenda's family 3 million pesos in moral damages. Naeem refused to make a final statement and listened to the verdict with an indifferent expression, as if it did not affect him. Immediately after the sentencing, his attorneys announced their intention to file an appeal. As the legal team prepared for the appeal, looking for new witnesses and evidence to support Naeem's innocence, the media uncovered incidents from his past that his parents had previously concealed. 2 former classmates accused Naeem of harassment and aggressive behavior. Both women agreed to testify, describing him as a dangerous individual who could not handle rejection. While he was often pursued by girls, on the occasions when someone rejected his advances, he responded by stalking, threatening, and trying to humiliate them. One classmate described how she had to transfer schools after Naeem tried to force himself on her. When she resisted, he retaliated by spreading malicious rumors and leaking private photos of her online. At the time, his father's legal team had managed to suppress these incidents. In March 2022, a retrial was held for Brenda's case. With the new testimonies considered, the court upheld its original ruling. Naeem Vera was sentenced to life in prison, with no possibility of parole for at least 51 years.
On December 8, 2019, a man emerged from Koyan Junction railway station, carrying a large, heavy black bag. Koyan Junction is a major railway station on the central line of the Mumbai Suburban Railway Network, located at the junction of the northeastern and southeastern lines of the Mumbai Suburban Division of the Central Railway, 54 kilometers northeast of Mumbai. At 5:15 a.m., dawn was just breaking and the sun had not yet risen. Despite the early hour, Koyan Junction is always busy because it operates 24 hours a day with trains arriving and departing constantly. As a result, many auto rickshaws are typically waiting outside the station, especially during nighttime. In India, auto rickshaws are motorized versions of traditional manually pulled or cycle rickshaws. They are usually owned and operated by private individuals. A man with a heavy black bag approached an auto rickshaw driver outside the station and asked for a ride to Bhiwandi. The distance from Kalyan Junction to Bhiwandi was only 3 miles and would take approximately 15 minutes. However, the rickshaw driver immediately noticed a terrible smell coming from the man's bag. The man said he had some rotten vegetables in his bag that he planned to throw into the river on the way. The smell was so strong that the rickshaw driver refused to take him to Bhiwandi. The man walked over to another nearby auto rickshaw driver to see if he would take him as a passenger. He left his heavy bag next to the first rickshaw driver because it was too difficult to carry. While waiting, rickshaw driver started to wonder why the man had put rotten vegetables in a brand new bag. If the vegetables were spoiled, wouldn't he usually just use a plastic bag? The rickshaw driver noticed that the bag emitted a smell similar to that of a butcher shop where meat is prepared. The man convinced an auto rickshaw driver to take him, but the driver only agreed to the ride for 180 Indian rupees, which is about $2, because of the foul odor coming from the bag. Normally, the fare from Kalyan railway station to Bhiwandi is just 80 rupees, or about $1. The first driver nearby overheard this and was surprised that he would pay more than double the usual fare. This made the driver suspicious, so he asked the man to open the bag. Upon hearing the rickshaw driver's words, the man became nervous and didn't respond. Instead, he instructed the second auto rickshaw driver to start driving. However, the second driver also found him suspicious and refused to take him. A tense situation developed outside the railway station. The first driver then called the police. When the man saw this, he panicked, left his bag behind, and bolted toward Kalyan railway station, disappearing from sight. Meanwhile, other auto rickshaw drivers outside the station called the police to report the abandoned bag and the foul odor coming from it. After the call, police quickly arrived at the railway station. The auto rickshaw driver reported that a man had approached him with a smelly bag, but when he had asked him to open it, he had run away. Alarmed, the police instructed everyone to back off. They then opened the black bag in front of the crowd. As soon as the bag was unzipped, everyone present, both auto rickshaw drivers and police officers, was struck with fear. It was likely the first time any of them had seen such a terrifying sight. Even some of the officers were witnessing something this gruesome for the first time in their careers. Inside the bag were the severed lower half of a human body, specifically, human legs. From the start, the police identified the dismembered body as belonging to a woman based on its physical characteristics. They promptly sent the body part to a nearby hospital for an autopsy and DNA testing. However, since the body was missing its head, it was very challenging to establish what the deceased woman might have looked like or what her facial features were. The pathologists quickly informed the police that the woman's body had been dismembered with a weapon that had sharp, serrated edges. They noted scratches on her thighs and observed that the area where her torso had been separated was cut in a rough, uneven way. This led them to believe that a handsaw was likely used in the dismemberment. The police discovered from the pathologist examining the body that the girl had been murdered 2 to 3 days prior. They estimated her age to be between 20 and 25 years. At the same time, the police struggled to identify the unclaimed body. Recognizing the gravity of the situation, the crime branch, also known as the Crime Investigation Department, joined the investigation. Afterward, the Kalyan police stepped up their investigation and decided to interview the auto rickshaw drivers who had first noticed the bag and alerted them. When the police spoke with first driver and his fellow drivers, they learned that the person who placed the black bag near the railway station was wearing a red shirt and khaki pants, and had a white cloth wrapped around his head. Since this unidentified individual had left Kalyan railway station, the police and the crime branch team quickly requested CCTV footage from all cameras at the station. The police then organized a large team to analyze all the camera footage, focusing on the time frame from 4 a.m. to 6 a.m. on December 8th. After several hours of searching, some officers finally spotted the man in the red shirt on one of the station's cameras. To their surprise, he wasn't alone. Another man in a pink shirt was also seen holding the bag as they both exited the station together. However, the first driver and the other auto rickshaw drivers reported that only one person had approached them. When the officers shared the CCTV footage with the drivers, they recognized the man in the video as the one who had delivered the black bag to them. They also informed the police that when they called the police emergency number in front of that man, he became frightened and ran back inside the railway station. This led the police to review more CCTV footage. In another CCTV footage, a man wearing a red shirt was spotted running on a platform. He entered a restroom, took off his red shirt, and put on a different shirt. This change was probably made to avoid being recognized, although he kept his khaki-colored pants on. When he left the restroom, he walked casually, trying to appear nonchalant. By this point, he had likely boarded a train and escaped, which posed a new challenge for the police. They needed to identify this man and find out where he had come from. The officers speculated that he was likely local to Koyan City, as it would be unusual for someone to carry a heavy bag containing human legs over a distance of 100 to 150 miles just to dispose of it. After the suspect left Koyan railway station at around 5 a.m., the police collaborated with railway officials to determine how many trains had stopped there around that time and their origins. They discovered that 3 trains had arrived at the station within a 20-minute window, 10 minutes before and 10 minutes after 5 a.m. The police then traced these trains back to their previous stops. At that point, only half of the girl's body had been found. The police believed that if the murderer had placed her legs in a black bag, he might have dismembered the rest of her body and disposed of it in another black bag elsewhere. Consequently, they issued a public alert asking people to report any abandoned bags immediately. They also contacted their informants to check if any girls aged 20 to 25 had recently been reported missing in the nearby areas. The police continued their search for the man seen in CCTV footage from 3 different railway stations. Their efforts paid off when they spotted a man in a red shirt at Titvala railway station around 4 a.m., waiting for a train. He was carrying the same large, heavy black bag. He had received help from a man in a pink shirt at Koyan railway station. The 2 stations are about 9 miles apart, so it was clear that he couldn't have walked the entire distance with such a heavy bag. He must have used some form of public transportation. The police decided to question the auto rickshaw drivers waiting outside the station. They used screenshots from the CCTV footage to show each driver and asked if any of them had dropped a man off at the railway station with a large bag. While the man's face was unclear in the images, his clothing was distinctive. One of the auto rickshaw drivers outside Titvala railway station recognized the photo and approached the police, stating that he was the one who dropped the person off at the station in the early hours of December 8th. When the police inquired where he had picked up the man, the driver explained that there was a place in Titvala called Indira Nagar, where the man had been standing on one of the roads. He said that when the man saw his auto rickshaw, he had flagged him down and asked for a ride to the railway station. He mentioned that the man had a very large bag that he couldn't lift by himself, so he helped him load it into his rickshaw. After that, he stated that he had dropped the man off at Titvala railway station as he had requested. Upon receiving this information, the police quickly went to the spot where the driver had picked up the man. On their way to Indira Nagar, they got an important call from an informant. The informant shared that the man who left the black bag at Koyan railway station, the same person they had been tracking through CCTV footage, actually lived in a chawl in Indira Nagar. This news surprised the officers because the chawl was very close to where they were. Without delay, the police team changed direction and headed toward the chawl. During the investigation, they learned that in India, a chawl is a form of low-cost housing commonly located in densely populated areas with limited living space. The police found a girl around 13 or 14 years old who was in the 6th grade. They showed her a photo of a man in a red shirt and asked her if she recognized him, suggesting that he might live around there. Although the man's face was not very clear in the photo, the girl identified him by his clothing and hairstyle, stating that the uncle looked like Arvind uncle. The police then asked her where Arvind uncle lived. After obtaining his flat number, they went to his apartment but found the door locked from the outside. The officers felt disappointed, as they had not yet located the man despite their efforts. Rather than give up, they decided to interview Arvind's neighbors. During these conversations, the police also showed some of the neighbors the CCTV footage from the railway station. From this, they learned that the man's full name was Arvind Tiwari and that he worked as a manager at a transportation company called Pawan Hans Logistics. However, after speaking with the neighbors a little longer, the police discovered that Arvind Tiwari had a daughter who lived with him, but she hadn't been seen in the past 2 to 3 days. This raised concerns for the police. Not only was Arvind missing with his house locked, but his daughter had also not been seen for days. As the pieces of the puzzle started coming together, their suspicions about Arvind deepened, and they grew increasingly worried about his daughter. Because of this, the police went to the transportation company where Arvind worked to look for him. They found Arvind Tiwari there at the time. The first question the officers asked him upon seeing him was, "Where is his daughter?" The moment he heard this, a trace of tension appeared on his face, and the police immediately sensed that Arvind was hiding many secrets. Sensing this, the officers took Arvind to the police station for questioning, away from the rest of the company's employees. Even there, the police repeated their question about his daughter. However, at first, he continued lying, saying his daughter has gone to the village to meet her mom and sisters. After hearing this, the police realized that Arvind himself would not tell the truth. Because of this, they showed him the CCTV footage in which he was captured. When the police asked him about the black bag, he broke down and then confessed his crime, admitting that he himself killed his daughter. The legs recovered from the bag belonged to his 22-year-old daughter, Kristine Tiwari. After this, Arvind voluntarily recounted the entire story behind why he killed his daughter. Arvind Tiwari, 47 years old, was originally from Jaunpur, Uttar Pradesh, a city about 915 km away from Kalyan. Besides him, his wife and 4 daughters also lived in Jaunpur, with Kristine being the eldest among them. In early 2016, Arvind moved from Jaunpur to Malad in search of work. During this time, in June 2019, his eldest daughter Kristine completed her graduation and moved in with her father to pursue a better future. Kristine decided that she wanted to get a job to financially support her father and the rest of the family. Within a few days of arriving, she began looking for a job at a local company. Soon, she found success and secured a small position at a private firm not far from home. However, about 2 to 3 months later, in October or November 2019, Kristine informed her father that she was in love with a boy and wanted to marry him. However, Arvind Tiwari was an old-fashioned man, one could call him a conservative father. When he found out that the boy his daughter wanted to marry was from a different caste, he outright refused the marriage. On the other hand, Kristine was adamant that she would only marry him. Arvind was unwilling to accept this marriage because he believed that if he married his daughter into another caste, people in society would say a lot of things against him. Besides, he still had to arrange the marriages of his 3 other daughters, and if Kristine married outside their caste, it would create difficulties for 3 other daughters' marriages as well. With Kristine insisting on marrying the same guy and her father Arvind equally adamant about stopping the marriage, arguments between father and daughter began to occur from time to time. On the evening of December 6, 2019, after both Arvind and Kristine returned home from their respective work, another argument broke out. However, this time the argument escalated to the point where, in anger, Kristine consumed rat poison, causing her to lose consciousness. At this point, it is unclear whether Kristine consumed the rat poison herself or if Arvind, exerting control over her, deliberately made her drink it. In fact, the police believe that Arvind had mixed the poison into his daughter's food, and as soon as Kristine ate it, she lost consciousness. Arvind Tiwari insisted to the police that Kristine had taken the poison by herself. However, this raised an important question: if Arvind was honest, Why didn't he take her to a hospital or doctor right away? The facts show that Princey was left unconscious in their home throughout the night, and instead of seeking help, Arvind chose to go to sleep. When he woke up on the morning of December 7th, he found that Princey had stopped breathing and had died from the poisoning. Seeing this, Arvind became extremely anxious and decided to dismantle his daughter's body to hide it in faraway places or rivers. He thought that if he did this, the police would never find Princey's body, and he wouldn't be caught. That morning, Arvind went to the market and bought 2 large bags and a handsaw. He returned home and, in his small room, cut his daughter's body into 3 parts. He removed her head from her torso and then separated the torso from the legs. He placed the legs in one bag, the torso along with both hands in another bag. This horrifying task took him all day. When night arrived, he took the bag containing his daughter's torso out of his room. He used public transportation and convinced an auto rickshaw driver to take him to his desired location by claiming he was carrying rotten vegetables. On the way, he discarded the bag into a river in Titvala. The next morning, December 8th, Arvind left again, this time with a bag containing the lower half of his daughter's body. He first arrived at Titvala railway station and then took a train to Koyan railway station. After getting off the train with the heavy bag, a passerby noticed Arvind struggling and offered to help. The man, wearing a pink shirt, assisted Arvind in lifting the bag and carried it outside the railway station before departing. Later, police confirmed that the passerby seen in the CCTV footage was not the murderer. He had simply helped Arvind with his luggage. The police tracked him down to his home, where he reiterated that he had no knowledge of the contents of the bag and only provided assistance. Following this, the police took Arvind with them as they searched for Princey's upper body and head. Arvind admitted that he had thrown the bag containing Princey's torso into the Ulhas River, leading the police to follow the river in hopes of finding it. On December 11th, they located the bag in the Ulhas River. Subsequently, the police turned their attention to finding Princey's head. Arvind guided them to the place where he had disposed of it. Despite searching for several days, they could not find the head. However, they did recover the handsaw used in the murder from the area Arvind had pointed out. While her head remained missing, forensic scientists were able to verify through DNA testing that the body was indeed that of Princey Tiwari. A father had brutally killed his own daughter simply because she had fallen in love with a boy from another caste and wanted to marry him. Now, Arvind Tiwari is in police custody. By committing this murder, he has not only ruined his own life but also the lives of his 4 daughters and his wife. In the end, this man will spend the rest of his life behind bars. The murder of Princey Tiwari by her father, Arvind Tiwari, in Titvala, India, revealed the devastating toll of caste-based prejudices. Arvind's refusal to accept Princey's inter-caste marriage led to her poisoning and the gruesome disposal of her remains in the Ulhas River. Arrested and charged under Section 302 of the Indian Penal Code, Arvind faces life imprisonment, likely with additional penalties for tampering with evidence. While justice awaits final sentencing, the tragedy has shattered Princey's family and sparked calls for reform, urging India to confront rigid traditions that fuel such irreversible losses. It was early morning in Chapel Hill when 2 friends returned to their apartment, assuming Faith Hedgepeth was just sleeping in. Her car was parked outside, and the door was unlocked, making everything seem normal. However, as they entered her room, they were shocked by what they found. A blanket covered something on the floor. There was blood on the walls. The room was eerily quiet, but it was evident that something horrific had occurred. There were no signs of forced entry. Security cameras had not captured anyone coming or going, only a few strange late-night texts and some unusual behavior. It was a crime scene that would be etched in their memories forever. What really happened in that apartment? Why did it take so long to catch her killer? Faith Hedgepeth was born on September 26, 1992, in Warren County, North Carolina. She was a proud member of the Haliwa Saponi Native American tribe. After her parents divorced when she was an infant, her mother, Connie Hedgepeth, and her older sister, Rolanda, played significant roles in her upbringing. Despite the separation, Faith maintained a strong relationship with her father, Roland, who described her as the light that helped him overcome his struggles with addiction. Her birth gave him renewed purpose. Faith was gifted and ambitious, excelling in her studies. She received the prestigious Gates Millennium Scholarship and enrolled at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, where she initially pursued a degree in biology. Although she faced challenges transitioning to university life, Faith remained determined. She switched her major, worked 2 jobs, and stayed focused on her goal to be the first in her family to graduate from college. She aspired to become either a pediatrician or a teacher, reflecting her compassionate nature. Faith shared an off-campus apartment in Chapel Hill with her friend and former freshman roommate, Karina Rosario. They lived in an apartment at Hawthorne at the View, a complex just minutes from campus. At one point, Karina's boyfriend, Eric Takeoe Jones, also stayed with them, but his presence created tension. Their relationship became toxic, characterized by conflict and breakups. Even after Karina changed the locks, Eric tried to break into the apartment twice. With Faith's support, Karina secured a protective order against him. Despite this, Eric moved into another unit in the same complex, remaining disturbingly close. On September 6, 2012, Faith attended her classes and then participated in an event hosted by Alpha Pi Omega, the oldest Native American sorority in the country, which she hoped to join. At 7:15 p.m., she left the event to work on a history paper about her tribe. At 8 p.m., she and Karina went to the campus library. From 8:30 to 9, she exchanged text messages with her father about her hopes of joining a sorority. Faith briefly left and returned at 11:30 p.m. They headed back to their apartment around midnight. Shortly after, they decided to go to The Thrill, a nightclub that allows entry for people under 21. Security footage showed them entering The Thrill at 12:40 a.m. They danced for over an hour before Karina began to feel unwell from drinking. They were recorded leaving at 2:06 a.m., with Faith driving them home. Upon returning to their apartment, Karina reportedly got sick and went to bed. Around 3 a.m., a neighbor heard loud noises from above, which sounded like heavy thuds, similar to furniture being knocked over or a heavy backpack falling. Faith's Facebook account showed activity at around 3:30 a.m. Just 10 minutes later, a text message from Faith's phone was sent to Brandon Edwards, one of Karina's ex-boyfriends. The message said, "Hey B, can you come over here, please? Rosario needs you more. You know, please let her know you care." Brandon replied the next afternoon at 4:16 a.m., asking who had messaged him, but by then, it was too late for a response. No reply ever came. While these messages were sent, Karina's phone also displayed outgoing calls to Brandon. At 3:52 a.m. Karina called Jordan McCrary, a UNC-CH soccer player she knew. At 4:25 a.m., Karina left the apartment and got into McCrary's car. She left the apartment door unlocked because she thought Faith was asleep. The following morning, around 10:30 a.m., Karina tried to contact Faith for a ride back but received no response. So, she reached out to their mutual friend Marisol Rangel, who came to pick her up. They arrived at the apartment just before 11 a.m. and assumed Faith had just slept in. Once inside, they called her name but got no reply. What they discovered in the bedroom was shocking. Faith's body was found partially undressed and covered with a blanket, positioned against the bed. Her shirt had been pulled up over her head, and there were signs of a brutal attack, with blood splattered on the walls, floor, and furniture. A used tampon was also found near her body. There were no signs of forced entry, and unfortunately, no security cameras recorded any activity in or out of the apartment that night. Karina was the one who called 911. When the authorities arrived at the apartment, Faith's death was confirmed at the scene. The crime was extremely brutal. Faith had been violently attacked. In the following days and months after the murder of 19-year-old Faith Hedgepeth, investigators uncovered unsettling details that painted a chilling picture but still raised many questions. One key finding was the presence of semen on Faith's body. DNA testing showed that it matched genetic material found in the bedroom. Although physical evidence suggested a possible abuse assault, the autopsy revealed no significant trauma to the genital area. Nevertheless, the Chapel Hill police leaned toward the belief that Faith had likely been abused, a conclusion supported by her family. An autopsy determined that Hedgepeth died from blunt force trauma to the head, likely caused by being struck by an empty rum bottle in the apartment. The Bacardi rum bottle found at the crime scene became crucial evidence. It contained tissue fragments and DNA, leading investigators to suspect it might have been the murder weapon. Next to Faith's body was a fast food bag from Time Out with a handwritten message, "I'm not stupid," and "jealous." Interestingly, despite the room being covered in blood, the note remained clean. This implies that the killer either wrote it after the attack, taking the time to clean themselves, or placed it there carefully to hide their identity. Handwriting expert Peggy Walla analyzed the note and determined that it was written in a disguised manner, suggesting that the author intentionally altered their handwriting to avoid recognition. Faith's murder deeply affected the Chapel Hill community, where homicides are rare, averaging less than one per year. Police Chief Chris Blue stated that the investigation quickly became one of the largest homicide cases in North Carolina's history. However, updates were scarce for many months, making the search for answers painfully slow for Faith's family. Her mother, Connie, shared that they were not allowed to see Faith's body. Additionally, all information about her death was kept confidential by a court order, which was unusual for the Chapel Hill police. In December 2012, the FBI became involved in the investigation and created a psychological profile of the suspect. They believed that Faith's killer likely knew her and might have lived nearby. It was suspected that the individual took a special interest in the case, possibly discussing it often or showing unusual behavior afterward. By July 2014, after obtaining a court order, the Chapel Hill police released 300 pages of case documents. The autopsy report, which came out in September, confirmed what the family had suspected: Faith died from multiple blows to the head. Her body had numerous cuts and bruises, and blood was found under her fingernails, indicating she had fought for her life. Court documents revealed that during the initial investigation, only 2 apartments were searched, Faith's and one other in the same complex. Some sources claimed that the wooded area behind the apartment was never investigated. Additionally, reports suggested that no search dogs were used, and officers did not canvass the neighborhood to question other residents, which was surprising given the high-profile nature of the case. Faith's phone revealed a possible clue in her case. On the night she died, she called her friend, Marisol Rangel, 3 times, with one of the calls resulting in a voicemail that accidentally recorded while the phone was in her pocket. The message is hard to decipher, but those close to Faith believe it captured a moment of tension. Some think they can hear arguing or a struggle, while others perceive it as background noise from a nightclub. Faith's father, Roland, claims he can detect his daughter's distress in the recording. Journalist Tom Gasparoli became very interested in the case, starting a blog and podcast to help uncover the truth. He collaborated with forensic audio expert Arlo West, who analyzed the voicemail thoroughly. West, experienced in audio enhancement and forensic analysis, found that the recording contained 4 voices, 2 male and 2 female, suggested that the conversation was heated. The voicemail was timestamped at 1:23 a.m., just before Faith was seen leaving the club with her roommate. At 2:07 a.m. on September 7, 2012, surveillance cameras recorded Faith Hedgepeth and her roommate leaving the Thrill nightclub. Everything appeared normal at that time. However, as the events of that night were examined, investigators and independent experts started to doubt the accuracy of the digital evidence. Arlo West raised concerns about the timestamp of a voicemail left from Faith's phone at 1:23 a.m., which seemed inconsistent with the nightclub footage. West noted that both Faith and her friend Marisol Rangel had phones that often had timestamp issues. He also pointed out that the local cell towers were unreliable, suggesting the message might have been recorded at a different time. Although the Chapel Hill police agreed to review the enhanced audio version, they maintained confidence in the original metadata, stating they did not believe the recording captured the moment of the murder. Much of the attention also focused on Karina's ex-boyfriend, Barrick, who was known to dislike Faith's influence on Karina and reportedly blamed her for their breakup. police discovered concerning messages that Eric sent in the hours leading up to the murder. On September 6th, he texted a friend asking for forgiveness for something he was about to do. He also posted a similar message on Twitter. 3 days after Faith was killed, he shared a cryptic post on Facebook, stating, "Dear Lord, forgive me for all my sins and the ones I may commit today. Protect me from the girls who don't deserve me and those who wish me dead today." Investigators seized Eric's vehicle and searched his home, but they found no valuable evidence. His DNA did not match the sample found at the crime scene. Despite his cooperation, the police still considered him a person of interest, suspecting that he might know who was responsible, even if he was not directly involved. In 2015, police in Chapel Hill were hopeful that DNA evidence would eventually lead to an arrest in the case. Although they did not disclose the specific DNA details or its collection location, they maintained a positive outlook. At the same time, Faith's death caused significant fear and sorrow on campus. Memorial vigils were organized, including a traditional Native American ceremony to celebrate her life and spirit. Many students grieved for her, viewing her not just as a friend but as a cultural sister whose joy and compassion had positively impacted many. In 2016, a significant breakthrough renewed interest in the case. A laboratory in Virginia analyzed DNA from the crime scene and created a composite sketch of a potential suspect. This image was developed using forensic phenotyping, which can predict characteristics such as eye color, skin tone, face shape, and likely ancestry. The results suggested that the suspect might be of Native American descent with either European or Latino ancestry. While the sketch was not a definitive identification, it offered investigators and the public a possible face associated with the crime. Several people associated with Faith were investigated in connection with the ongoing case. One of them was a man who left the nightclub with Faith and Karina. He had arrived at the club earlier with 3 companions. All 4 were questioned and provided DNA samples, but none matched the DNA from the crime scene. Faith's father has been very vocal, insisting that Karina knows more than she has shared. Other people have also raised concerns about Karina's actions after Faith's body was found, regarding the 911 call she made. The call lasted over 8 minutes but did not mention Faith by name and omitted the fact that another friend was present in the apartment, giving the impression that Karina was alone. Police have indicated that Karina's account raises several questions, and there are inconsistencies in what she told investigators. One neighbor who saw Karina shortly after the body was discovered remarked that neither girl seemed upset. Complicating matters, Karina had reportedly left the nightclub early because she felt unwell but then left her apartment again just hours later, leaving the front door unlocked. A university soccer player picked her up, and his roommate noticed a small red mark on Karina's clothing that day. Police were alerted and searched for the shirt, but the test results were inconclusive. Authorities could not determine if the stain was blood, nor could they connect Karina directly to the crime. Despite the absence of physical evidence linking her to the murder, Karina has remained a key figure in the investigation. A private investigator, who is closely working with Faith's family, believes that the truth may involve Karina. He speculates that a possible argument between Faith and Karina at the Thrill nightclub, possibly related to a relationship, could have triggered Faith's death. Shortly after the murder, Karina moved out of North Carolina and has not publicly addressed the case. According to Faith's father, Roland, she also stopped returning his calls. Nevertheless, the police state that Karina has always been cooperative when they contacted her. For almost 10 years, the murder of Faith Hedgepeth remained clouded by theories, suspicions, and unanswered questions. Friends, former partners, and acquaintances were all investigated, and despite numerous leads, no arrests were made until 2021. On September 16, 2021, the Chapel Hill Police Department announced they had arrested 28-year-old Miguel Salguero Olivares from Durham, North Carolina. This breakthrough didn't come from tips or interviews, but from DNA collected after Miguel was arrested for a DUI in Wake County the previous month. His DNA profile was entered into the system and matched DNA found at the crime scene nearly 9 years earlier. Additionally, court documents revealed that a palm print found on the suspected murder weapon, a liquor bottle, also matched Miguel, strengthening the case against him. Prior to this discovery, the police had not identified him as a suspect, and his name had not appeared in earlier reports. Police Chief Chris Blue urged the community to be patient, saying, "This story will take time to completely unfold." In November 2024, the case took a significant turn. Prosecutors updated the original charges, adding 3 new ones: first-degree burglary, first-degree abuse, and first-degree abuse offense. These new charges intensified the seriousness of the allegations and clarified what may have happened in Faith's apartment that night. The arrest brought a mix of relief and renewed anguish. After years of uncertainty, a suspect had finally been named, someone now officially accused of causing Faith's death. However, as the legal proceedings began, it started a new phase in the quest for answers. Who was Miguel Salguero Olivares? How did he meet Faith? What exactly occurred in her final moments? For her family, this was a long-awaited step toward justice. Yet, for a community still grieving, it was just the beginning of discovering the complete truth. It was early morning in Chapel Hill when 2 friends returned to their apartment, assuming Faith Hedgepeth was just sleeping in. Her car was parked outside, and the door was unlocked, making everything seem normal. However, as they entered her room, they were shocked by what they found. A blanket covered something on the floor, there was blood on the walls. The room was eerily quiet, but it was evident that something horrific had occurred. There were no signs of forced entry, security cameras had not captured anyone coming or going, only a few strange late-night texts and some unusual behavior. It was a crime scene that would be etched in their memories forever. What really happened in that apartment? Why did it take so long to catch her killer? Faith Hedgepeth was born on September 26, 1992, in Warren County, North Carolina. She was a proud member of the Haliwa-Saponi Native American tribe. After her parents divorced when she was an infant, her mother, Connie Hedgepeth, and her older sister, Rolanda, played significant roles in her upbringing. Despite the separation, Faith maintained a strong relationship with her father, Roland, who described her as the light that helped him overcome his struggles with addiction. Her birth gave him renewed purpose. Faith was gifted and ambitious, excelling in her studies. She received the prestigious Gates Millennium Scholarship and enrolled at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, where she initially pursued a degree in biology. Although she faced challenges transitioning to university life, Faith remained determined. She switched her major, worked 2 jobs, and stayed focused on her goal to be the first in her family to graduate from college. She aspired to become either a pediatrician or a teacher, reflecting her compassionate nature. Faith shared an off-campus apartment in Chapel Hill with her friend and former freshman roommate, Karina Rosario. They lived in an apartment at Hawthorne at the View, a complex just minutes from campus. At one point, Karina's boyfriend, Eric Takoi Jones, also stayed with them, but his presence created tension. Their relationship became toxic, characterized by conflict and breakups. Even after Karina changed the locks, Eric tried to break into the apartment twice. With Faith's support, Karina secured a protective order against him. Despite this, Eric moved into another unit in the same complex, remaining disturbingly close. On September 6, 2012, Faith attended her classes and then participated in an event hosted by Alpha Pi Omega, the oldest Native American sorority in the country, which she hoped to join. At 7:15 p.m., she left the event to work on a history paper about her tribe. At 8 p.m., she and Karina went to the campus library. From 8:30 to 9, she exchanged text messages with her father about her hopes of joining a sorority. Faith briefly left and returned at 11:30 p.m., they headed back to their apartment around midnight. Shortly after, they decided to go to The Thrill, a nightclub that allows entry for people under 21. Security footage showed them entering The Thrill at 12:40 a.m. They danced for over an hour before Karina began to feel unwell from drinking. They were recorded leaving at 2:06 a.m., with Faith driving them home. Upon returning to their apartment, Karina reportedly got sick and went to bed. Around 3 a.m., a neighbor heard loud noises from above, which sounded like heavy thuds, similar to furniture being knocked over or a heavy backpack falling. Faith's Facebook account showed activity at around 3:30 a.m. Just 10 minutes later, a text message from Faith's phone was sent to Brandon Edwards, one of Karina's ex-boyfriends. The message said, "Hey B, can you come over here, please? Rosario needs you more. You know, please let her know you care." Brandon replied the next afternoon at 4:16 a.m., asking who had messaged him, but by then, it was too late for a response. No reply ever came. While these messages were sent, Karina's phone also displayed outgoing calls to Brandon. At 3:52 a.m. Karina called Jordan McCrary, a UNC-CH soccer player she knew. At 4:25 a.m., Karina left the apartment and got into McCrary's car. She left the apartment door unlocked because she thought Faith was asleep. The following morning, around 10:30 a.m., Karina tried to contact Faith for a ride back but received no response. So, she reached out to their mutual friend Marisol Rangel, who came to pick her up. They arrived at the apartment just before 11 a.m. and assumed Faith had just slept in. Once inside, they called her name but got no reply. What they discovered in the bedroom was shocking. Faith's body was found partially undressed and covered with a blanket, positioned against the bed. Her shirt had been pulled up over her head, and there were signs of a brutal attack, with blood splattered on the walls, floor, and furniture. A used tampon was also found near her body. There were no signs of forced entry, and unfortunately, no security cameras recorded any activity in or out of the apartment that night. Karina was the one who called 911. When the authorities arrived at the apartment, Faith's death was confirmed at the scene. The crime was extremely brutal. Faith had been violently attacked. In the following days and months after the murder of 19-year-old Faith Hedgepeth, investigators uncovered unsettling details that painted a chilling picture but still raised many questions. One key finding was the presence of semen on Faith's body. DNA testing showed that it matched genetic material found in the bedroom. Although physical evidence suggested a possible abuse assault, the autopsy revealed no significant trauma to the genital area. Nevertheless, the Chapel Hill police leaned toward the belief that Faith had likely been abused, a conclusion supported by her family. An autopsy determined that Hedgepeth died from blunt force trauma to the head, likely caused by being struck by an empty rum bottle in the apartment. The Bacardi rum bottle found at the crime scene became crucial evidence. It contained tissue fragments and DNA, leading investigators to suspect it might have been the murder weapon. Next to Faith's body was a fast food bag from Time Out with a handwritten message, "I'm not stupid," and "jealous." Interestingly, despite the room being covered in blood, the note remained clean. This implies that the killer either wrote it after the attack, taking the time to clean themselves, or placed it there carefully to hide their identity. Handwriting expert Peggy Walla analyzed the note and determined that it was written in a disguised manner, suggesting that the author intentionally altered their handwriting to avoid recognition. Faith's murder deeply affected the Chapel Hill community, where homicides are rare, averaging less than one per year. Police Chief Chris Blue stated that the investigation quickly became one of the largest homicide cases in North Carolina's history. However, updates were scarce for many months, making the search for answers painfully slow for Faith's family. Her mother, Connie, shared that they were not allowed to see Faith's body. Additionally, all information about her death was kept confidential by a court order, which was unusual for the Chapel Hill police. In December 2012, the FBI became involved in the investigation and created a psychological profile of the suspect. They believed that Faith's killer likely knew her and might have lived nearby. It was suspected that the individual took a special interest in the case, possibly discussing it often or showing unusual behavior afterward. By July 2014, after obtaining a court order, the Chapel Hill police released 300 pages of case documents. The autopsy report, which came out in September, confirmed what the family had suspected: Faith died from multiple blows to the head. Her body had numerous cuts and bruises, and blood was found under her fingernails, indicating she had fought for her life. Court documents revealed that during the initial investigation, only 2 apartments were searched, Faith's and one other in the same complex. Some sources claimed that the wooded area behind the apartment was never investigated. Additionally, reports suggested that no search dogs were used, and officers did not canvass the neighborhood to question other residents, which was surprising given the high-profile nature of the case. Faith's phone revealed a possible clue in her case. On the night she died, she called her friend, Marisol Rangel, 3 times, with one of the calls resulting in a voicemail that accidentally recorded while the phone was in her pocket. The message is hard to decipher, but those close to Faith believe it captured a moment of tension. Some think they can hear arguing or a struggle, while others perceive it as background noise from a nightclub. Faith's father, Roland, claims he can detect his daughter's distress in the recording. Journalist Tom Gasparoli became very interested in the case, starting a blog and podcast to help uncover the truth. He collaborated with forensic audio expert Arlo West, who analyzed the voicemail thoroughly. West, experienced in audio enhancement and forensic analysis, found that the recording contained 4 voices, 2 male and 2 female, suggested that the conversation was heated. The voicemail was timestamped at 1:23 a.m., just before Faith was seen leaving the club with her roommate. At 2:07 a.m. on September 7, 2012, surveillance cameras recorded Faith Hedgepath and her roommate leaving the Thrill nightclub. Everything appeared normal at that time. However, as the events of that night were examined, investigators and independent experts started to doubt the accuracy of the digital evidence. Arlo West raised concerns about the timestamp of a voicemail left from Faith's phone at 1:23 a.m., which seemed inconsistent with the nightclub footage. West noted that both Faith and her friend Marisol Rangel had phones that often had timestamp issues. He also pointed out that the local cell towers were unreliable, suggesting the message might have been recorded at a different time. Although the Chapel Hill police agreed to review the enhanced audio version, they maintained confidence in the original metadata, stating they did not believe the recording captured the moment of the murder. Much of the attention also focused on Karina's ex-boyfriend, Barrick, who was known to dislike Faith's influence on Karina and reportedly blamed her for their breakup. Police discovered concerning messages that Eric sent in the hours leading up to the murder. On September 6th, he texted a friend asking for forgiveness for something he was about to do. He also posted a similar message on Twitter. 3 days after Faith was killed, he shared a cryptic post on Facebook, stating, "Dear Lord, forgive me for all my sins and the ones I may commit today. Protect me from the girls who don't deserve me and those who wish me dead today." Investigators seized Eric's vehicle and searched his home, but they found no valuable evidence. His DNA did not match the sample found at the crime scene. Despite his cooperation, the police still considered him a person of interest, suspecting that he might know who was responsible, even if he was not directly involved. In 2015, police in Chapel Hill were hopeful that DNA evidence would eventually lead to an arrest in the case. Although they did not disclose the specific DNA details or its collection location, they maintained a positive outlook. At the same time, Faith's death caused significant fear and sorrow on campus. Memorial vigils were organized, including a traditional Native American ceremony to celebrate her life and spirit. Many students grieved for her, viewing her not just as a friend but as a cultural sister whose joy and compassion had positively impacted many. In 2016, a significant breakthrough renewed interest in the case. A laboratory in Virginia analyzed DNA from the crime scene and created a composite sketch of a potential suspect. This image was developed using forensic phenotyping, which can predict characteristics such as eye color, skin tone, face shape, and likely ancestry. The results suggested that the suspect might be of Native American descent with either European or Latino ancestry. While the sketch was not a definitive identification, it offered investigators and the public a possible face associated with the crime. Several people associated with Faith were investigated in connection with the ongoing case. One of them was a man who left the nightclub with Faith and Karina. He had arrived at the club earlier with 3 companions. All 4 were questioned and provided DNA samples, but none matched the DNA from the crime scene. Faith's father has been very vocal, insisting that Karina knows more than she has shared. Other people have also raised concerns about Karina's actions after Faith's body was found, regarding the 911 call she made. The call lasted over 8 minutes but did not mention Faith by name and omitted the fact that another friend was present in the apartment, giving the impression that Karina was alone. Police have indicated that Karina's account raises several questions, and there are inconsistencies in what she told investigators. One neighbor who saw Karina shortly after the body was discovered remarked that neither girl seemed upset. Complicating matters, Karina had reportedly left the nightclub early because she felt unwell but then left her apartment again just hours later, leaving the front door unlocked. A university soccer player picked her up, and his roommate noticed a small red mark on Karina's clothing that day. Police were alerted and searched for the shirt, but the test results were inconclusive. Authorities could not determine if the stain was blood, nor could they connect Karina directly to the crime. Despite the absence of physical evidence linking her to the murder, Karina has remained a key figure in the investigation. A private investigator, who is closely working with Faith's family, believes that the truth may involve Karina. He speculates that a possible argument between Faith and Karina at the Thrill nightclub, possibly related to a relationship, could have triggered Faith's death. Shortly after the murder, Karina moved out of North Carolina and has not publicly addressed the case. According to Faith's father, Roland, she also stopped returning his calls. Nevertheless, the police state that Karina has always been cooperative when they contacted her. For almost 10 years, the murder of Faith Hedgepeth remained clouded by theories, suspicions, and unanswered questions. Friends, former partners, and acquaintances were all investigated, and despite numerous leads, no arrests were made until 2021. On September 16, 2021, the Chapel Hill Police Department announced they had arrested 28-year-old Miguel Salguero Olivares from Durham, North Carolina. This breakthrough didn't come from tips or interviews, but from DNA collected after Miguel was arrested for a DUI in Wake County the previous month. His DNA profile was entered into the system and matched DNA found at the crime scene nearly 9 years earlier. Additionally, court documents revealed that a palm print found on the suspected murder weapon, a liquor bottle, also matched Miguel, strengthening the case against him. Prior to this discovery, the police had not identified him as a suspect, and his name had not appeared in earlier reports. Police Chief Chris Blue urged the community to be patient, saying, "This story will take time to completely unfold." In November 2024, the case took a significant turn. Prosecutors updated the original charges, adding 3 new ones: first-degree burglary, first-degree abuse, and first-degree abuse offense. These new charges intensified the seriousness of the allegations and clarified what may have happened in Faith's apartment that night. The arrest brought a mix of relief and renewed anguish. After years of uncertainty, a suspect had finally been named, someone now officially accused of causing Faith's death. However, as the legal proceedings began, it started a new phase in the quest for answers. Who was Miguel Salguero Olivares? How did he meet Faith? What exactly occurred in her final moments? For her family, this was a long-awaited step toward justice. Yet, for a community still grieving, it was just the beginning of discovering the complete truth. In a seemingly quiet house, fear permeated the air. A family was trapped in a room, holding their breath and hoping that the locked door would protect them. Suddenly, a gunshot rang out. The lock broke, someone collapsed, and footsteps echoed in the hallway. This was not just a random burglary, it was a premeditated act. When the police arrived in the morning, they discovered a perplexing crime scene. A family of 4 and their 3 dogs were found shot dead in their home. It appeared to be a robbery, yet nothing had been taken. All clues pointed toward one individual, but the real question remained: who was truly in control? As detectives looked for answers, they realized the situation involved far more than just love, jealousy, or revenge. Someone had orchestrated everything. When the truth finally emerged, it was more shocking than anyone could have anticipated. Nathaniel Huey Jr. was born around 1993 in an environment where crime and violence were common. As a child, he displayed a reckless, rebellious attitude. He had little interest in school, often fighting with classmates and neglecting his studies. His first run-in with the law occurred during his teenage years when he was caught participating in a robbery. Due to his age, he faced minimal consequences. Nathaniel soon discovered that a life of crime offered not only excitement but also financial rewards. His criminal activities escalated, and by 2016, he was imprisoned for assault. A year later, he was arrested again for driving under the influence. Nathaniel had a particular fascination with firearms. He built a collection of guns. Although the courts prohibited him from owning firearms, he disregarded this ban, turned to the black market to acquire weapons illegally. Despite his criminal history, Nathaniel attempted to pose as a legitimate businessman by starting a private security company, even though it was not properly licensed. Legally, he was not allowed to carry a weapon, yet he boasted about his supposed authority on social media, posting pictures of himself in tactical gear and heavily armed. On the other side of the story is Ermelinda Palomo, born on 1973. By the time she met Nathaniel, she was a fiercely independent woman, a mother of 5, and already a grandmother. Although she had a stable upbringing, her personal life was marked by challenges. She had married young, but the marriage ended, leaving her to raise her children on her own. Determined to support them, she held multiple jobs while managing her responsibilities as both a mother and grandmother. She was strict with her family, which earned her respect but sometimes led to resentment. When she met Nathaniel, those around her found it hard to understand their connection. He was 20 years younger, had a tumultuous past, and represented the chaos she had always tried to avoid. Some say they met through mutual friends, but regardless of the circumstances, their relationship moved quickly. Initially, Ermelinda brushed Nathaniel off, but his confidence, persistence, and reckless charm drew her in. For Nathaniel, Ermelinda represented stability and a sense of security he had never experienced. For her, it was a new adventure, an opportunity to feel in control over someone with a free lifestyle. Their relationship was unconventional, with an attraction rooted in their differences. Soon, they moved in together, sharing a crowded home with Ermelinda's children and grandchildren, but their living situation was anything but harmonious. Nathaniel's obsession with weapons remained strong over the years. Despite legal restrictions, he continued to buy and show off firearms, making secret deals and finding loopholes to justify his actions. For him, guns were not just a collection, they were a part of who he was. He always carried a weapon, even inside the house, frequently took apart and cleaned his firearms on the kitchen table. At first, Ermelinda paid little attention to this behavior. She was more focused on the money he made than the legality of his actions. However, as time passed, she began to realize that Nathaniel's interests went beyond financial gain. He was unpredictable and could become angry over minor issues, such as a misplaced word or an unfriendly glance. His temper could shift from intense rage to unnerving calm in an instant. Cristiana Espinoza, one of Ermelinda's daughters, was the first to express concern. Unlike others who ignored the warning signs, she recognized Nathaniel for who he really was, a dangerous man. She noticed how he talked about violence, carried himself with arrogance, and never tolerated being contradicted. But what scared her the most was how quickly he could lose control. By 2021, Nathaniel and Ermelinda had been living together for 6 years. On the surface, their relationship appeared stable, but its foundation had deteriorated long ago. Nathaniel had always been unfaithful, and his affairs had become routine. He used social media to meet new women, engaged in secretive conversations, and carefully deleted his messages. Often, he would leave late at night, providing vague excuses about work or meetings. Ermelinda would wake up in the middle of the night to find him gone. He would return by dawn without any explanation. Nathaniel never feared being caught. He thought Ermelinda either wouldn't discover his infidelities or wouldn't confront him if she did. He mistakenly believed he had all the control, not recognizing Ermelinda's true strength. At first, Ermelinda chose to overlook the warning signs, but soon the evidence became too clear to ignore. His late nights, secretive messages, and newfound obsession with his appearance all indicated something troubling. Her fears were confirmed when she saw a suspicious message pop up on his phone, leaving no room for doubt. Rather than confronting him right away, Ermelinda decided to gather evidence. If Nathaniel thought he was safe from consequences, he was about to find out otherwise. She began monitoring him closely, observing his movements, noting his habits, and even checking his messages when he wasn't paying attention. Before long, she could tell when he was lying, when he was trying to cover his tracks, and when he was sneaking off for yet another secret meeting. With each new revelation, her anger grew stronger. She realized she had two options: to leave him behind and erase him from her life, or to make him regret every decision that led to this moment. The more she considered it, the clearer her resolve became. She refused to be just another woman he discarded. If she wanted to make him feel pain, she had to be strategic. Instead of erupting into an argument, she decided on a different approach. She would make him feel cornered. She planned to turn his own life against him. Ermelinda's plan began with deception. She created fake social media accounts, selecting photos and inventing identities to construct believable personas. She studied online scams to learn how to manipulate and deceive effectively. This included understanding threats, the structure of underground networks, psychological tactics. Her most powerful tool was information. She figured out how to track locations, access hidden data, and manipulate the digital landscape in ways Nathaniel would not anticipate. Then, she initiated her scheme. Her first contact with Nathaniel came through a woman who seemed genuinely interested in him. As expected, he fell for it and responded eagerly, unaware that he was entering Ermelinda's trap. Initially, their conversations appeared harmless, consisting of light flirtation. However, she began to drop hints about his life that she shouldn't have known, leading him to believe someone was monitoring him. The tipping point came when she sent him a message with his real-time location. This left Nathaniel unsettled. Ermelinda could see the change in his demeanor as he started looking over his shoulder and checking his surroundings. But her tactics were far from over. The next phase of deception brought in new individuals. Nathaniel began receiving messages from various people. Some were threatening, while others falsely claimed to offer him protection. They contacted him through different platforms and phone numbers, without any clear pattern. Some messages demanded money, while others warned him to avoid certain locations. A few suggested that he was already involved in something much larger than himself. This confusion was intentional. His behavior changed almost overnight. He became restless and anxious, avoided answering unknown calls, constantly checked his surroundings, and even asked Ermelinda to drive him around to ensure he wasn't being followed. He changed his passwords and deleted messages, trying to rid himself of the unseen threat. However, the more he attempted to escape, the more entangled he became in Ermelinda's scheme. She observed with satisfaction as paranoia consumed him. Unbeknownst to him, the real danger was lurking right under his roof. In May 2023, a new woman entered Nathaniel's life, Zoraida Bartolome, one of his co-workers. Zoraida was already entangled in her own complicated situation. She was married with 2 children but was unhappy at home. She had cheated in the past and didn't feel guilty about it, believing that her own happiness was more important than being loyal. For Nathaniel, Zoraida represented an exciting escape from his troubled relationship with Ermelinda. Their connection began with stolen glances and quiet conversations, quickly escalating into something they both found hard to abandon. Ermelinda had been observing Nathaniel closely and noticed a shift in his behavior. At first, she assumed Zoraida was just another fleeting romance, but then she discovered messages that revealed deeper feelings. Nathaniel was telling Zoraida that he loved her and wanted a future together. She reciprocated those feelings, and they fantasized about leaving everything behind to start anew. As Ermelinda read their exchanges, she felt a mix of pain and humiliation. Despite her efforts to protect their relationship, Nathaniel was pursuing another woman. Now, she felt compelled to take drastic action against him. She escalated the psychological manipulation, introducing even more frightening figures into Nathaniel's life. He was no longer just being observed, he felt as if he was being hunted. Nathaniel had endured too much to feel fear anymore. He had survived the worst, or so he thought. Now, all that mattered to him was Zoraida. Leaving her was not an option. For the first time, he wasn't merely hiding an affair, he was fighting for it. Ermelinda noticed this change in him. If she couldn't break Nathaniel directly, she would aim to destroy Zoraida instead. Her first tactic was to undermine Zoraida's stability. Using her network of fake accounts, she contacted Zoraida's husband, Alberto Rolón. Initially, she planted vague doubts through anonymous messages that suggested betrayal. She even included photos of Zoraida and Nathaniel together, ensuring they were clear enough to raise suspicion. However, Alberto was not easily swayed. He dismissed the warnings, unwilling to accept that his wife could deceive him so openly. That's when Ermelinda intensified her approach. The subsequent messages were not just about infidelity, they included threats. Unsigned letters arrived at their home with clear implications. If Alberto did not take action, his family would be in danger. Alberto began to observe Zoraida more intently. The tension in their home was exactly as Ermelinda had intended. However, Nathaniel was still unwilling to let go. Even as paranoia invaded his life, he held on to Zoraida as if she were his last hope. Ermelinda manipulated his perceptions, convincing him that Zoraida was providing information to the people spying on him. She crafted a story so believable that even Nathaniel began to doubt his own reality. Using fake accounts, she sent messages from imaginary informants, all suggesting the same idea. Zoraida wasn't just a woman Nathaniel had fallen for, she was working against him and was the source of the ongoing threats. Nathaniel's paranoia took over him completely. He confronted Ermelinda about his suspicions, and she played along convincingly. Initially, she seemed unsure, but then she reluctantly confessed that she had also received warnings about Zoraida. Nathaniel realized he could no longer dismiss these concerns. He had to take action to ensure his survival. Next, Ermelinda put him to the ultimate test of loyalty. She made him believe that his supposed enemies were closely monitoring him and required evidence that he hadn't betrayed them. The only way he could prove his loyalty was by making a crucial decision himself: kill Zoraida. By the time Nathaniel reached his decision, he felt no hesitation. There was no fear or regret, just a cold, determined focus on what needed to be done. He started planning immediately, treating the situation like a mission. Nathaniel studied Zoraida's routines, tracked her schedule, and identified when she was most vulnerable. He noted when Alberto was home, when the children were asleep, and when it would be easiest to enter the house. He mapped out potential escape routes, looking for surveillance cameras and memorizing the neighborhood layout. Simultaneously, he prepared his supplies. He already had a stockpile of weapons but gathered additional tools, including clothing to help him blend into the night, gloves to avoid leaving fingerprints, tape, and a flashlight. Together with Ermelinda, he chose items carefully, ensuring no one would suspect anything. Although Ermelinda remained in the background and was not directly involved, she always provided guidance to keep him on track. By the time everything was ready, Nathaniel had stopped considering the consequences. The night came. Ermelinda drove toward Zoraida's house with an unsettling calmness, acting as if it were just another evening. She even asked Nathaniel why he needed to go there, though she already knew the reason. He didn't answer. He no longer cared about her opinion, only the task ahead mattered. When they arrived at the house, Ermelinda remained in the car while Nathaniel got out. As he expected, the front door was locked. He quietly moved around to the side of the house, found a window, and broke the glass. The sound startled Alberto awake. He sat up, listened intently, and then cautiously approached the noise. By that time, Nathaniel was already inside. As soon as Alberto rounded the corner, Nathaniel fired his gun, but his shot went wide. Realizing this was more than just a break-in, Alberto turned and ran toward the hallway, desperate to reach his family's room before the intruder. However, Nathaniel was quicker. Gunshots rang out through the house. Alberto fell to the ground before he could reach the door. For a brief moment, there was silence. Then the next gunshot broke the stillness, sending Zoraida into a panic. Without thinking, she rushed to the bedroom, pulling her children along, and slammed the door shut, locking it behind her. She knew Nathaniel was inside and was unsure how many others he was with, but her priority was to keep her family safe. Moments later, Nathaniel slammed his shoulder against the door, trying to force it open, but it held strong. Frustrated, he stepped back, aimed his gun, and shot at the lock. The bullet pierced through the wood. Zoraida gasped as the impact hit her. She stiffened and then collapsed. The doors swung open, the children huddled together, their eyes filled with fear. The neighbors only heard a few brief, muffled gunshots. It all happened within minutes. Nathaniel looked around at the scene, took a deep breath to calm himself, and then began to methodically rearrange things. He flipped over furniture, opened drawers, and scattered valuable items on the floor to make it appear as though a robbery had taken place. Once he finished, he stepped over the bodies and exited into the night. Ermelinda was waiting for him in the car. She didn't need to ask how it went, her expression said it all. They drove away silently, leaving the chaos behind. The sounds had awakened the neighborhood, and after a few minutes, someone finally summoned the courage to call 911. Soon after, sirens filled the street. Officers arrived to find shattered glass, a broken door, and clear signs of a break-in. Inside, the bodies revealed a much darker story than just a failed robbery. Nathaniel had made serious mistakes, careless ones. Nothing of value had been stolen. The disarray of his possessions seemed like a feeble attempt to mislead. It was evident that this incident wasn't simply about theft, it was premeditated and targeted. By morning, detectives were connecting the crime to Nathaniel Huey, the only person with a motive. At Zoraita's workplace, everyone knew about their affair, it hadn't been a secret. As detectives continued to investigate, things looked increasingly bad for Nathaniel. His history was filled with crimes, assaults, suspicious dealings, and a collection of weapons. As the police gathered evidence, Ermelinda maintained her facade. She kept messaging Nathaniel, using the false identity she had created. She assured him that everything was under control, claiming the mafia was protecting him and that as long as he followed their instructions, he'd be safe. He trusted her, but the investigation was progressing more quickly than Ermelinda anticipated. They scrutinized Nathaniel's recent activities, analyzing every call, email, and text message. One thing stood out: in recent months, he had received a flood of anonymous threats, warnings of danger, and claims that he was being hunted. However, all those messages had originated from newly created accounts. If this were truly a mafia operation, why was the evidence focusing solely on Nathaniel? The more the detectives uncovered, the clearer it became that the threats were staged, as if someone had been fabricating a false narrative specifically for him. This was the turning point in the investigation. Nathaniel was in a downward spiral. He sensed that the police were closing in on him and started noticing unmarked cars tailing him, along with strangers watching him too closely. He convinced himself that the mafia was still after him, waiting for him to make a mistake. In his desperation, he reached out to the only person he believed he could trust, his mother. He begged her for help, claiming he was being falsely accused of something terrible and needed to go into hiding. However, she refused to help him. With nowhere else to turn, Nathaniel managed to stay hidden for a few days, but eventually, security cameras captured him in a grocery store. A manhunt ensued, with patrol cars flooding the area, but by the time the officers arrived, Nathaniel and Ermelinda had already made it onto the highway. The chase began, police followed with sirens blaring for miles, but Nathaniel had no plans to stop. He gripped the steering wheel tightly, accelerating and weaving through traffic in a frantic attempt to flee. Ermelinda had carefully planned every detail leading up to this moment, and now she was watching her plan unfold perfectly. Ahead of them, traffic became congested. Nathaniel attempted to navigate around a truck, but he lost his grip, causing the tire to screech against the road. The car spun out of control, crashing into the guardrail and flipping multiple times before coming to a sudden stop. Officers surrounded the wreck, weapons drawn. Nathaniel slumped in the driver's seat, a gun in his hand, while Ermelinda sat motionless beside him. In those final moments, he had turned the gun on her and then himself. Investigators sifted through the wreckage, trying to understand what had transpired inside the car. Did he realize what was happening? The investigation didn't stop there. Detectives focused on Ermelinda's devices. Hidden within her files were hundreds of messages, chat logs, and notes detailing her manipulation of Nathaniel, dozens of fake accounts that she had carefully created and controlled. She had constructed this elaborate scheme. She understood how to break a person's will and instill fear so deeply that they would do anything to escape it. And it had worked. Nathaniel had never been in danger, there was no mafia. The true enemy had been sitting right beside him all along. In the end, the case was closed, but one question lingered. Did Nathaniel understand the situation before he took action? Ermelinda's calculated plan, fueled by wounded pride and a desire for revenge, transformed Nathaniel from an unfaithful partner into a paranoid pawn who unwittingly executed her deadly scheme. The Romeoville murders, disguised as a robbery, revealed the devastating consequences of unchecked emotions and hidden motives. As the investigation uncovered Ermelinda's intricate web of lies, it left one lingering question unanswered. Did Nathaniel ever glimpse the truth behind his actions, or did he remain trapped in her illusions until the end? Lorraine Cox was a 32-year-old woman living in Exeter, UK. She is dating a man named Ellie who lives in Scotland. Although the distance between them is quite long, they have gotten used to it. At first, they only met on weekends and talked, but gradually their feelings for each other grew deeper. By 2020, they had been in contact in this way for 2 years. Despite the challenges of the distance, they decided to get engaged. Now, they are building a future together and preparing for their wedding. Lorraine is also planning to have their first child. However, in early 2020, their plans had to change for several reasons. By February, Lorraine had moved to Scotland to be with Ellie, where she obtained a temporary visa, and they spent considerable time together. When summer arrived, she wanted to return to Exeter to visit her family and friends for a month or two. This trip was not a breakup, she simply missed her loved ones. Afterward, she intended to return to Scotland and continue strengthening their relationship. Although restrictions in the UK remained strict, they were gradually relaxing, allowing public events to resume and many establishments to reopen. People eagerly took to the streets to socialize again, and Lorraine was no exception. On September 1, 2020, she arrived at her father's house in Exeter, excited to reconnect with friends. They spent the evening visiting several bars, enjoying drinks and good company, until they realized it was time to go home. Everyone left in a good mood. On September 2nd, Lorraine posted an unusual message on social media, claiming she was going to leave the country. This surprised everyone, as her only previous move had been to Scotland, and she had no plans to relocate again. She had just arrived to visit her father and intended to stay for at least a month. This sudden change in her mood and plans seemed out of character. In her post, Lorraine mentioned wanting to move about 50 kilometers from her father's house to a place called Plymouth, which she described as the first stop on her planned journey. This behavior was shocking because Lorraine was not known for making impulsive decisions, especially on such a significant scale. She had a stable life and a loving relationship in Scotland and had never mentioned wanting to move elsewhere. Now, she was considering a move toward France. Unsurprisingly, this post had a deep impact on Ellie. They had a strong relationship, making his fear of losing her understandable. Lorraine's friends bombarded her with questions. Initially, she responded willingly, but as the conversation progressed, her tone changed and mistrust grew. Those who knew her well noticed shifts in her writing style. She began using unfamiliar emojis, making odd mistakes, and her messages conveyed a sense of hostility. This worried her loved ones, as she had always maintained positive relationships with them, and there was no reason for her to display such aggression or undergo drastic life changes. Her father, Tony, who was hosting her during this time, even showed a family friend her old messages alongside the new ones. He pointed out clear inconsistencies in her writing style. Even those who didn't know her well noticed something was off. Throughout this time, Lorraine's boyfriend, who was named Ellie, was especially concerned and tried to understand her behavior. Initially, she responded to him with short, cold replies, but eventually, her answers became even more abrupt. The conversation ended when Lorraine sent him an emoji of a middle finger. This intensified the suspicion that someone else was using her account. Ellie had known Lorraine for 2 years, so the idea that the trip was related to a breakup or conflict seemed unlikely. They valued each other, which made her odd responses even more perplexing. Unfortunately, because of the distance, her boyfriend felt helpless and unable to intervene. A situation arose concerning Tony, Lorraine's father. Determined to discover the truth, he faced a challenge because he was away at the time and couldn't check his daughter's room for clues. Instead, he began speaking to Lorraine's friends, particularly those who had been with her the day before her sudden move to Plymouth. He was scheduled to return home the next day. Upon arriving home, Tony's first action was to go to Lorraine's room, where his suspicions grew stronger. He had already spoken with her close friends, and they all confirmed that no one had seen Lorraine since their breakup at the bar when everyone had left for the night. Inside Lorraine's room, it appeared as though she had never returned after her outing with friends. Her belongings from Scotland remained untouched, and nothing was missing from her room. It looked as if she had left for an extended trip without taking any of her things, which seemed impossible. The most alarming discovery was the bag she had left behind. Lorraine had diabetes and always carried a first aid kit to monitor her blood sugar levels. Her health depended on these supplies, and she never went anywhere, even for a quick trip to the store, without them. For outings like the one to the bar, she typically used a smaller bag. The fact that her larger kit was still in her room raised serious concerns about her recent plans. Tony realized that his daughter had not returned from the party, leading him to fear that something might have happened to her health. The messages she had exchanged with friends and relatives also seemed troubling. Worried, Tony sent another message to Lorraine on social media, expressing concern for her health and asking if she was okay. He warned her that if she did not respond, he would have to contact the police. The message was seen, but he received no reply. After that, Tony's and Lorraine's friends could no longer tolerate the uncertainty and began their search. They started by looking for clues in the bar where they had spent the evening on September 2nd. They interviewed witnesses, distributed flyers, and retraced the presumed route Lorraine would have taken home. It was clear that something alarming must have happened during her journey since she never came home again. Law enforcement and journalists quickly became involved. They were skeptical of the theory that Lorraine might have suffered a health crisis. Detectives believed that if that were the case, she would not have been able to send messages to her friends. Furthermore, several days had passed since her disappearance, and she would likely have been found in a hospital, but tests of recent admissions yielded no results. It appeared far more likely that Lorraine had encountered danger from someone. Journalists rushed to report on the situation, highlighting concerns over Lorraine's disappearance. They recalled that in May 2018, 2 years before Lorraine vanished, an attacker named Robert Proud had attacked a woman who strikingly resembled her. He had abused her but did not kill her, and then evaded capture for a long time. Given his criminal history, it raised fears that there could be more victims. Although he had completed his prison sentence, investigators began considering Lorraine as a potential victim. At the time of her disappearance, Robert was living near the path Lorraine would have taken home. This connection led to his arrest, and police sought to extract a confession from him. They believed he had kidnapped, abused, and possibly killed her, and that he might have disposed of her body. It was suspected that he took her phone and pretended to communicate with her friends and family to buy himself time and create confusion. There was another theory regarding Lorraine's disappearance. Some believed that Robert might have attacked her, but instead of dying, she was hiding to avoid becoming his victim again. The detectives prioritized finding Lorraine because she was clearly in danger. Robert might have been holding her hostage. The situation could have escalated, posing a significant threat. To test this theory, they began reviewing surveillance footage from cameras along Lorraine's potential route that night. Even after narrowing down the time frame, they had about 11,000 hours of footage from over 400 cameras across 120 different locations. Analyzing this footage was time-consuming, but it proved worthwhile, yielding the first clues needed to catch the criminal. Eventually, they spotted a girl who matched Lorraine's description in the recordings. After leaving her friends at the bar, she headed toward her father's house without making any turns. She almost made it home, but a few blocks away, something caught her attention: a kebab shop on the ground floor of an apartment building, which was open at night. Lorraine went inside, likely to grab a snack, and then left to eat on a bench before continuing her way home. Around 2:45 a.m., she returned to the kebab shop, but this time accompanied by an unfamiliar man. This raised alarms because he didn't appear to be just a random passerby. The footage suggested they had interacted, and he had managed to get her attention. The police continued to investigate the recordings and noted that the young man had been following Lorraine after they left the shop. This behavior was concerning, especially since she seemed to be walking voluntarily and the street was deserted. Detectives suspected the man might be a predator who targeted his victim, potentially involved in Lorraine's disappearance and the messages she had sent to her loved ones after the incident. He maintained a distance while following her, trying to remain inconspicuous, and seemed to be assessing the situation. It looked as though he was stalking her, especially since she appeared intoxicated and was stumbling. She had a valuable phone, and with no one accompanying her that night, he saw an opportunity to attack. The police attempted to locate another recording to determine how Lorraine left the building from at least one camera, but were unsuccessful. It appeared she had not exited at all. They spent considerable time reviewing the video footage, only to confirm that Lorraine had not left since she was last seen. The detectives concluded that she might still be inside, possibly being held against her will. Unfortunately, by the time they gathered this information, 8 days had passed. Given this long duration, only a miracle could save Lorraine, who suffered from diabetes. Nevertheless, her family held on to hope. The police obtained a clear photo of the man who accompanied and followed Lorraine that night. They printed it out and began distributing it through the media to attract witnesses. Initially, they visited the kebab shop and spoke with the owner. He informed them that he lived above the shop but had rented the apartment below to a young man about a month ago. This young man had moved in unofficially and was very withdrawn, to the extent that the owner didn't know much about him. The owner even expressed doubts about the young man's name. When police officers visited the apartment, they anticipated finding a crime scene. However, everything was surprisingly neat and clean. The young man living there identified himself as Christopher Mayer and showed them his identification. There was no sign of Lorraine in the apartment, and he allowed the detectives inside without any resistance. They inspected the place thoroughly to ensure that no one was being held against their will. Christopher was then shown a photo of Lorraine, along with a CCTV image in which a man resembling him was seen accompanying her to the house. He strongly denied any connection, claiming that he did not know her. However, the clear photograph made the police skeptical, as the similarities were unmistakable. A brief verbal confrontation ensued, with Christopher maintaining his stance. During this exchange, he insisted that he would never bring a strange woman to his apartment. The police then became interested in Christopher's mobile phone, which they seized for examination. They discovered that it contained Lorraine's SIM card, although the card was currently missing. This evidence confirmed that he had at least seen her recently. Further investigation revealed that a suspicious post had been made on Lorraine's social media account using this mobile phone. It appeared that Christopher had sent strange messages to her loved ones. After the unsettling incident, whatever it was, he had taken Lorraine's phone. Rather than using it for communication, he inserted a SIM card into his own phone to access her contact list and social media account. This raised further suspicions about Christopher. He was the last person confirmed to have seen Lorraine alive, and his attempts to manipulate her account seemed suspicious. It became clear that he was trying to cover his tracks, raising questions about his motives that the authorities still needed to uncover. Christopher was arrested and charged with the kidnapping of Lorraine Cox. That same day, forensic experts arrived at his apartment to investigate. They used a substance called luminol to carefully examine the area. While they found several suspicious traces of evidence, the most alarming findings were in a nearby alley. During their search of the apartment, they discovered blood and numerous signs that supported the theory that Lorraine was dead, particularly around a garbage can. The forensic team speculated that Christopher might have disposed of evidence by throwing away the body. They searched the alley and found a large plastic bag inside one of the trash containers that contained human remains. However, it was not a complete body. Some parts, including the torso and head, were missing, making identification difficult. Consequently, the case shifted from a missing persons investigation to a murder investigation, and the work continued. Detectives learned that on the night of Lorraine's disappearance, in addition to Christopher, 5 other young men were present. However, none appeared on the CCTV footage with Lorraine. These men likely entered the apartment to buy food or for other reasons, but their involvement needed further investigation. They could have unwittingly been present during the crime or could have assisted in covering up evidence. Notably, the group behaved very differently, except for Christopher. Everyone was cooperative and willing to provide information. Upon further investigation, the 5 other young men were found to be locals who lived nearby. Since there was no evidence against them, they were released. In stark contrast, Christopher was uncooperative, reluctant to talk, and often gave vague or confusing answers. He seemed to believe that the police lacked sufficient evidence against him, but they soon discovered that his real name was Azam Mangori. This revelation marked a turning point in the investigation, as detectives confronted him with the truth, signaling the beginning of the unraveling of his story. Azam claims that he changed his name because he was born in the Kurdistan region of Iraq, where people who do not follow tradition can face severe punishment, including being stoned to death. As an adult, he left his conservative homeland but still lives in fear of being hunted down and killed. To avoid this dangerous situation, he began calling himself Christopher. He had been living illegally in the UK since December 2018 to avoid returning to Iraq. Azam also possessed a high-quality fake ID under the name Christopher Mayer to evade detection by immigration authorities. This explains why the landlord knew almost nothing about the man. He was very cautious, had not attended school or worked anywhere, and lived off odd jobs. However, the interrogation ended abruptly. After admitting to these things, he refused to talk about Lorraine. His previous admissions were not significant to the police. DNA testing confirmed that the remains found in a trash bin were those of Lorraine. In Azam's apartment, DNA traces and other evidence indicated that Lorraine had been killed there because Azam had failed to clean thoroughly. The police also discovered a large handsaw and replacement blades purchased after the crime. Other items found included a driver's license, a debit card, and a wallet, all mutilated. Nearby trash bins contained bloody clothing, Lorraine's phone, and a SIM card discarded in the sewer. Unfortunately, parts of her body were never recovered. Detectives analyzed the location data from Azam's mobile phone on the day of Lorraine's murder and the subsequent days when he disposed of evidence. This investigation led them to a location on the city's outskirts known as Tin Pit Hill. During the search, they found Lorraine's torso and head, which were not well concealed. Investigators noted unsettling details. A piece of clothing was stuffed into her mouth, and a patch of skin was missing from her back, possibly taken as a trophy by the perpetrator. Unfortunately, no other body parts were located, and the remains were in an advanced state of decomposition, complicating the determination of the cause of death. The forensic expert concluded that Lorraine had likely been strangled. Despite strong evidence of his guilt, Azam continued to deny his involvement and created false stories. He even attempted to involve banned organizations in the case. The trial commenced in spring 2021. Although he never confessed, Azam and his defense team significantly altered his narrative. He now claimed to have a normal orientation and stated that he encountered Lorraine when she came to his place late at night after a bar visit. He approached her on the street and convinced her to come to his apartment for some intimacy. Azam maintained that Lorraine voluntarily came to his apartment after drinking heavily and using illegal substances. He claimed that after trying those substances himself, he experienced severe distortion of perception and lost consciousness. When he regained awareness, he found Lorraine in the bathroom, unresponsive. He alleged that he saw a puddle of urine beneath her and believed she had overdosed. Azam attempted to perform CPR, but it was unsuccessful. In a panic and without knowing the emergency number, he sat on the bathroom floor next to her body. Hallucinations then began, and he claimed to see dark creatures emerging from her mouth, prompting him to shove a piece of his t-shirt into her mouth to stop it. He pushed the cloth in so far that it could have caused her to choke. Despite being in a state of panic, he managed to find and send a video he had recorded around the same time to a friend, where he appeared calm and even exhaled smoke into the camera. He explained that he filmed the video to help himself calm down. His behavior grew increasingly bizarre. Instead of calling for help, he decided to dispose of the body and planned to flee from his relatives. Naturally, this account sounded implausible, leaving him with no solid defense. According to Azam, he was unsure what he would do after Lorraine died and kept her body in his apartment until he decided to dispose of it. When his anxiety reached its peak, he chose to throw it away. He called a taxi to take the bag with the remains to a wooded area on the outskirts of Exeter. Prosecutors noted that he seemed to be obsessed with amputation, as evidenced by the precise cuts he made, which horrified forensic experts. It was clear he had researched this topic extensively and was well prepared. That evening, Azam tried to connect with people on an escort website, seeking companionship but was unsuccessful. Later, he saw Lorraine on the street eating alone and viewed her as an ideal target. It seems that Azam may have premeditated this murder to fulfill his dark fantasies. Even with substantial evidence against him, his trial lasted 5 weeks. Ultimately, the jury found him guilty of murder and attempting to obstruct justice. He received a life sentence but is eligible for parole after 20 years, which means he could be released at the age of 44. Lorraine's boyfriend, Ellie, experienced profound grief, stating that a part of him died with her. He lives daily with this pain and struggles against despair. Lorraine's father, Tony, organized a charity march to rally support for his daughter. Participants silently walked the route she would have taken from the bar to her home, a journey she never completed. In the aftermath, Tony became an activist advocating for more CCTV cameras on UK streets to help prevent and solve violent crimes. He also started to make regular donations to an anti-abuse organization based in the UK. Even after justice was served, Lorraine Cox's family remained uncertain about how Azam was able to lure her into his apartment. Security footage showed her following him willingly. Azam claimed that he engaged her in conversation and offered her alcohol and a banned substance, which she accepted. However, toxicology reports found no traces of banned substances in her system, and a forensic expert stated that she did not die from diabetes, suggesting that Azam's account might be false. Sadly, the truth about what happened in his apartment may never be revealed, as only Azam and Lorraine know what truly occurred. Some believe Azam exploited Lorraine's kindness by asking for help, and that she may have felt unable to refuse, ultimately leading her into a dangerous situation. In Michigan, there is a small town called Traverse City, with a population of about 15,000. It is famous for the picturesque Lake Michigan, on the shores of which several resorts can be found. In the summer, a large number of tourists are attracted by festivals and water sports events. They come to swim, ride boats, enjoy delicious local food, and appreciate the unique landscapes around Lake Michigan. In the winter, the area is snowy and quiet, there are few tourists, and life flows very slowly. It was in such a place that 18-year-old Kaylee Bruce lived and worked. She was always a cheerful and bright person. In addition, she was very smart, attractive, and determined. By the 1990s, she was considering pursuing an education. Thanks to her academic success in high school, she managed to gain admission to Northwestern Michigan College without any problems. The educational institution was located in Traverse City. To support herself away from her parents, Kaylee worked as receptionist of a local beach condominium company that rented out apartments, rooms, and houses to visitors. The condominium was situated right on the lake and was very popular during the tourist season. On the evening of Monday, February 16, 1998, Kaylee worked at beach condominiums from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. In February, there were virtually no tourists, only a few locals, so she was almost alone in the building. The night before, while talking to her friend Kim, who also worked at the condominium, she had expressed her eagerness for the start of the season, hoping for more guests and an increase in her salary. That same day, with a little over an hour left before the end of her shift, Kaylee had to do some light cleaning, put everything in the utility room, and then go home. That evening, Kim was not on shift but was passing by the beach condominiums at about 7:30 p.m. She had been driving her friends home after they had spent time together at a restaurant. As Kim drove past beach condominium, she looked toward the office through the window and noticed a light in the area of the administration desk, where Kaylee was preparing to close up. Kim wanted to quickly drop off her friends and then stop by to see Kaylee. However, when Kim returned about 40 minutes later, she saw that the light inside was off and Kaylee was nowhere to be found. Thinking she was late and that her friend had already left. Satisfied that her friend had gone home, she turned around and left. The next morning, on Tuesday, February 17, 1998, at about 7 a.m., the first person to arrive at the beach condominium's office was an air conditioning technician named Zachary Medin. He immediately noticed that the door was unlocked. Although this did not cause him alarm, he calmly walked inside and called out Kaylee's name. Receiving no answer, he saw that no one was at the reception desk where Kaylee should have already been preparing for her workday. She was never late and usually arrived early. All the lights were off, and Zachary walked around the floor. He noticed a glimmer through the crack of a door and decided to investigate further. When he got closer, he saw suspicious red stains near the threshold. It was unclear what it was, but when he opened the door, he realized the horrendous nature of the scene. In horror, Zachary ran away and immediately called emergency services at 911. When the police arrived, Zachary could barely speak, looking emotionally traumatized and barely holding back tears as he described the situation. The scene found in the utility room was soon deemed one of the most horrifying crime scenes in local law enforcement history. In the small room, where household appliances and cleaning supplies were stored, there was blood everywhere, on the walls, even the ceiling. In the middle of the room was the mutilated body of a girl. The victim was Kaylee Bruce, the 18-year-old employee. Next to her body lay all the broken pieces, with shards of plastic and metal covered in dried blood, as well as particles of scalp and hair. Kaylee was found naked, with one of the power cords from an iron wound tightly around her neck, cutting into her skin and crushing her larynx. According to the medical examiner's report, the victim had 19 deep lacerations that cut down to the bone. Her skull was crushed from numerous blows, fractures of the vault and facial bones were found. Severe injuries to her neck and throat were consistent with strangulation, indicating she had been beaten for an extended period with blunt objects on her body, abdomen, chest, and pelvis, leading to numerous internal bleeding. The most horrific detail discovered was a metal pin inserted into her perineum with such force that it damaged the tissues up to the pelvic bone, penetrating several centimeters into it. According to forensic experts, Kaylee remained alive for some time after sustaining this injury until she eventually bled out. Her death was undoubtedly a painful one. The entire small utility room was covered with her blood, and it was smeared over her body as if she had fought back. Despite the small size of the room, it took forensic experts 6 hours to collect dozens of pieces of evidence. They discovered numerous defensive injuries, indicating a brutal struggle, along with signs of disorder around the area. Apparently, Kaylee's resistance only angered her attacker. Footprints and similar traces were found strewn on the floor, suggesting that the attacker had jumped on Kaylee in an attempt to cover this terrible incident. Local reports described the scene, and the first thing that struck the arriving journalist was the amount of blood. He immediately realized they were dealing with one of the most terrible crimes in the town's history. Despite years of experience reporting from dozens of bloody crime scenes, he had never seen such cruelty before. He labeled the criminal a real monster and couldn't comprehend what could drive someone to commit such an atrocity against an innocent 18-year-old girl. Kaylee Bruce died at about 8 p.m. the previous day. It is possible that when Kim was standing outside the office, her friend was already beyond help. She herself miraculously avoided a collision with the killer. Kaylee's family was shocked by such a brutal murder and could not understand who could wish harm to such a sweet girl. Relatives, friends, and acquaintances told detectives that Kaylee was a very nice and kind person. No one had ever heard anyone speak badly of her. It was hard to imagine that someone would have a motive to attack her. Some items were missing from the crime scene, but nothing significant, so the theory of a robbery gone wrong was not considered. Detectives suspected that the perpetrator must have known Kaylee personally, given the brutal nature of the attack. Revenge, hatred, or jealousy seemed likely motives. The attacker was probably observing her and knew her daily routine, allowing him to choose the moment when Kaylee would be most vulnerable. He likely knew when to strike so that no one would be nearby, and she might have trusted him. They decided to search for the criminal among Kaylee's immediate acquaintances and among local residents who might have been in regular contact with her, possibly even living nearby. Unfortunately, there were no CCTV cameras on the premises of the resort or even inside the office, which left them without clues. All the blood at the crime scene was analyzed and confirmed to belong to the victim, but no fingerprints could be found. It was clear that the perpetrator had some criminal experience. He was probably wearing gloves or had carefully erased all traces of his presence. The forensic team collected more than 100 pieces of evidence from the small utility room. The only trace left by the aggressor were boot prints found on the body and the bloody floor. Forensic experts used a special substance that allowed them to obtain a clearer pattern of the shoe's sole along with all the small details. When the police received a full footprint, they assessed the killer's size. He had to be a tall, strong man who wore large shoes. The print had a clear tread, resembled work shoes. Detectives visited local stores to find a similar pair and discovered that the prints matched shoes from a brand called Pajar. When combined with the prints found on Kaylee's body, they turned out to be identical, leading to a person who likely used specific clothing. The young man who worked in the condominium quickly attracted the authorities' attention, Zachary Medden, who discovered the body and reported it to the police. Detectives were alarmed that he had gone to the police to report finding the body. This was a tactic sometimes used by murderers hoping to remove suspicion from themselves and gather information about the progress of the investigation. Zachary was taken to the station for an official interrogation to verify and exclude him from the list of suspects. He was still visibly shaken by what he had seen, struggling to control himself, and appeared sincere. Zachary voluntarily allowed his car to be searched. The investigation had reached a dead end, with no valuable information emerging and all suspects cleared. The excitement in a local community was reaching its peak. It became almost impossible to buy a regular pepper spray for self-defense, as supplies were quickly depleted. The main customers were schoolgirls and female students, afraid to walk alone or go out at night. One of the detectives arrived at the college dormitory where Kaylee studied, and witnesses reported several suspicious young people who had already checked in there. They needed to be checked. In the end, it turned out that they were not involved. The detectives spoke to their friend Kim, who knew Kaylee better than anyone else in the city. She said that shortly before the murder, Kaylee had broken up with her boyfriend, whose name was Dylan. They broke up and started dating again. As far as Kim knew, they had broken up again, but Dylan desperately tried to renew contact with Kaylee. He was obsessively persistent, even manipulative. They talked to him just 2 days after the murder. Dylan worked with heating, air conditioning equipment and serviced the units. They immediately noticed that he had boots of the brand Pilar, similar in size to the footprints found at the crime scene. Dylan had several pairs of the same brand, which were immediately sent to the laboratory for examination. However, no traces of blood could be found on them. Of course, he could have had other similar boots that he got rid of after the attack, but no matter how hard the police tried, they could not find any evidence against Dylan. Additionally, he had a reliable alibi, so he was excluded from the list of suspects. The killer could now be tens or even hundreds of kilometers away from the condominium, but the degree of cruelty suggested great hatred or sadistic inclinations. They were looking for all criminals prone to attacking women who had recently been released from prison and lived in the area. However, all efforts were in vain. During the inspection of the hill, a small metal rod was found. It was a part of a car tire valve. On it, they found Kaylee's blood and several hairs that did not belong to her. One of them had an entire follicle, which allowed them to create a DNA profile of the probable criminal. Hopes for this were still low as the technology at the time was not yet perfect. In any case, this version needed to be checked, and that took time. They decided to use all the meager materials available to them. They organized a press conference and appealed to the public. The key moment on which they focused was the problem of numerous false statements. People contacted the police station, and all leads were checked. One person who contacted them was a local resident who worked as a presenter at a radio station. His name was John Chandler. He immediately noted that his information could help find the criminal. On February 26, 1998, 10 days after the murder of Kaylee and following the press conference, John went to change the tires on his car. Near the resort area, there was an industrial park and a tire factory that he visited. While in the waiting room, he accidentally overheard the manager talking to the rest of the staff, trying to find one of the workers. The employees were discussing that a technician had not shown up for work and had not been seen for several days. They had all seen the press conference, so they suspected something was wrong. There were rumors that the missing man had a very bad character. One colleague mentioned that a day after the murder of Kaylee, he had seen this technician wearing boots of the brand Pajar, which had suspicious dark spots. A day later, he bought himself new shoes and did not wear that pair again. After hearing all of this, John immediately called the police station to request that they check this tip. He felt that this information was very important, and the detectives were convinced of its significance. They went to the tire factory. The manager immediately admitted that John's words were true. Colleagues that morning had discussed one of the employees of the organization, who turned out to be 25-year-old Kevin Holzer, the son of the director of the company. Several employees confirmed that he always wore large-sized Pajar boots while on shift. A few days after the murder, he had a new pair. After examining the area where Kevin usually worked, detectives noticed that small metal rods from tire valves were lying around on the floor. They looked very similar to the evidence from the crime scene. Local workers confirmed that these rods often flew off when changing tires. Now the police were sure that John's statement was leading them in the right direction. Their suspicions only grew stronger when they found out that Kevin had been renting a room in beach condominiums where Kaylee worked for 6 months. He had the opportunity to observe her, calculate her daily routine, and choose the right time when she would be alone. In fact, Kevin spoke with investigators as early as 8 a.m. on February 17th, when Kaylee's body was found. He was the only one who did not ask what had happened, which seemed strange. Kevin claimed he had quickly gone to work at the plant. Due to the lengthy process of examining the crime scene and collecting evidence, the detectives did not have the necessary clues when they spoke to Kevin. It became apparent that the criminal could have been in their hands from the very first minutes of the investigation, but he managed to slip away. The new main suspect was now wearing Pajar boots of the same size. It was decided to reanalyze the collected data and follow up on everything the local residents had said. The detectives spoke to one resident of beach condominiums. She said that, day of the attack, she returned home from work in the evening at about 10 p.m. The door was open, although she perfectly remembered locking it. It turned out that the master key had disappeared from the reception desk. Suspicions against Kevin were confirmed by Kaylee's friend Kim, who said that he often ran into the office and lingered at the reception desk while Kaylee worked there. Kim believed that Kaylee liked Kevin, so he tried to spend any free minute chatting, even on far-fetched topics. He constantly asked to be let into his apartment with spare keys, which only the condominium administrator had access to. He claimed that he had forgotten or lost his own key. It seemed he was just looking for a reason to get closer to Kaylee. Kevin was tall, athletic, practiced martial arts. He looked like a likely killer, but they failed to find him. He simply ran away. In search of additional information, they went to the tire factory where he worked and checked the guy's biography. They managed to find out that Kevin had problems with the police 5 years before the murder. He had been accused of abuse. In the late hours, Christina was returning home from a bar when a stranger grabbed her and dragged her into an alley, then began to beat her. She sustained very serious injuries and was sure that she was saved by a miracle. Realizing that the criminal wouldn't stop, Christina pretended to be dead and offered no resistance. As soon as she stopped moving, the criminal simply lost interest and left. Apparently, the attacker enjoyed beating and killing women, which was very disturbing. The potential serial killer could be anywhere, and now no one was safe. Trying to understand the moment when Kevin escaped, they realized that he had disappeared from all radar as soon as the press conference was over, which announced the size, brand of the shoes and the tread pattern he had worn before. In order to scare off the probable killer, the police obtained an arrest warrant and went to his apartment, but nothing valuable for their investigation could be found. There were no bloody shoes or clothing, and they even checked the drains in the bathroom, but found no traces of blood. This puzzled the detectives. Around the same time, a friend named Mike contacted the police station. He was very worried and said that he might know where to look for Kaylee's killer. Just before this, he and his friend, Kevin, had spent Friday night at a club. They were drinking and chatting after a new press conference had been held. Detectives got a warrant for Kevin's arrest. During the party, Mike's phone rang. On the other end was another friend who asked where Kevin was, that the main suspect in the murder who was sitting across from Mike. Kevin became noticeably nervous, but Mike managed to say that his girlfriend had called and asked him to come home. Kevin did not suspect anything and said it was time for him to go. Mike walked Kevin to the parking lot, where they said goodbye and went their separate ways. As soon as Kevin disappeared from sight, Mike immediately called the police station, providing a description of Kevin's car and clothing. Mike had said he was heading south but gave no exact directions. Kevin was driving a noticeably gold-colored car, which was quickly tracked down. Detectives arrived at the parking lot, but the car was abandoned, and Kevin was not there. It seemed he had managed to escape punishment again. The police spoke to the guard, who admitted that he had talked with Kevin for a long time before Kevin fled. He reportedly headed to Indiana and planned to use the train. The detectives were following Kevin closely, but he was slightly ahead. During this same period, testing of hair found on the metal part of Kaylee's body was completed. The blood from this small piece belonged to Kaylee Bruce, while the hair was male. Samples were taken from Kevin's apartment, allowing for a comparison of the criminal's DNA profile, which matched completely. They feared that he, like a cornered animal, could start killing again, but they managed to intercept and arrest him. Earlier, during his transfer to Chicago, he had refused to cooperate with the investigation and immediately demanded a lawyer. However, the evidence against him was irrefutable, and the prosecutor considered the trial a mere formality. Detectives discovered that Kevin had moved into the beach condominiums just 6 months before the murder. They suspected that he had not chosen his victim randomly. They believed he probably liked Kaylee and became obsessed with her, eventually stalking her. When he found out that Kaylee would be working and studying in the city, he decided to get as close to her as possible. Naturally, all this could not end well. On June 21, 1999, Kevin Holzer's trial began. He was charged with the murder of Kaylee Bruce. Despite his father's wealth and a smart defense attorney, it seemed even the attorney considered his client guilty and did not even attempt to acquit him. In October 1999, the jury decided that Kevin Holzer was guilty of first-degree murder, and he received a life sentence without the possibility of parole. In the years since before Kevin was convicted of abuse, there may have been more attacks. Their suspicion was investigated, but it was not possible to confirm these assumptions. Everyone in his circle was in danger. In which, the witness finds her apartment door open when she comes home from work. She is shocked by the lucky coincidence that she was missed by Kevin Holzer. The police believed this was not an accident. He had stolen the master key and used someone else's apartment because he knew that no one would be there for quite a long time. After the massacre, he entered someone else's territory to take a shower and wash away the traces of the attack. Kevin actually had no feelings for Kaylee except cruelty. Any girl could have been in her place. He intentionally found excuses to approach her, chat with her, and ask for her keys because he wanted to learn how to get them. He carefully calculated Kaylee's schedule as soon as she first talked to him. The lives of Traverse City residents were divided into before and after the murder of Kaylee Bruce. This massacre was so cruel and senseless that the crime is still imprinted in the memory of many townspeople.
The tragic case of Dr. Teresa Sievers, a story that illustrates how love can transform into betrayal and how greed can lead to horrific violence. How did a dedicated mother and accomplished doctor become the target of a murder scheme? What concealed truths were hidden behind closed doors? Let's delve into this story. Dr. Teresa Sievers was a physician dedicated to her patients. She graduated from Ross University School of Medicine in 1996 and opened her practice in Bonita Springs, Florida. Teresa focused on integrating traditional and alternative medicine to help patients who had run out of other treatment options. Her husband, Mark Sievers, worked as the office manager in her practice. They married in 2003 and had 2 daughters. Mark was initially seen as a supportive husband, but his behavior came under investigation after Teresa's murder. Financial difficulties faced by the family played a significant role in the subsequent events. The conspiracy to murder Dr. Teresa Sievers began at the wedding of Curtis Wayne Wright in May 2015. Mark, who was a guest, confided in Wright about his mental health struggles and his fear that Teresa would take their children away from him. Mark expressed his wish for Teresa to be killed, driven by financial motives concerning her life insurance policies with a total value of $4,433 million. He thought that her death would resolve his problems and provide the financial security he needed. Although initially hesitant, Wright eventually agreed to help Mark, stating that he could deal with the matter in exchange for a share of the insurance payout. Unbeknownst to Mark, Wright then enlisted the help of a third man to assist in the murder, Jimmy Ray Rogers, whom Wright had paid to help him. During his trial, Wright described Rogers as a violent individual with a background involving other murders, suggesting that he was well suited for the violent act against Teresa. Mark outlined 2 possible plans for carrying out the murder. The first plan involved killing Teresa at her home on June 28 and making it look like a burglary. To get ready for this, Mark checked how to access their property by climbing over the backyard fence and trimming bushes to clear a path to the garage. He also coached Wright on how to enter the house and disable the security system. The second plan proposed by Mark was to murder Teresa at her medical office on June 29, disguising it as a mugging. He provided Wright with aerial photos of the office, pointing out a hidden stairwell that Teresa often used when leaving late at night. Mark also shared the access codes for this stairwell with Wright, stressing that no matter where the murder happened, it should appear to be a robbery or burglary. On June 28, 2015, Dr. Teresa returned to her home in Bonita Springs, Florida, after abruptly ending a family vacation in upstate New York. She arrived at Southwest Florida International Airport, where security cameras recorded her pulling her suitcase through the terminal. After calling her husband Mark to let him know she was safe, Teresa got into her car and drove home. Unbeknownst to her, 2 men were already inside her house, waiting to carry out a deadly plan devised by her own husband. Inside the house, Wright and Rogers were lying in wait. Wright had grabbed the hammer from the garage earlier. They had planned this situation carefully over several weeks. When Teresa entered the kitchen, Wright attacked her from behind and struck Teresa once on the head. Shocked by the surprise attack, she turned to face him but received another blow. The violence quickly escalated as Rogers also joined the assault with his own hammer. Together, they violently attacked Teresa, hitting her repeatedly until she collapsed on the floor in a pool of blood. Witnesses later recounted how Teresa fought back, instinctively raising her hands to shield herself from the strikes. Despite her brave attempts to defend herself, she suffered a total of 17 wounds to her head before the kitchen fell silent. Once they were sure Teresa was dead, Wright and Rogers left the scene without triggering the alarm system, which they had previously disabled based on information from Mark. The murder was carried out quickly and left no immediate signs of forced entry, as they had used an unlocked side door to enter. After committing their crime, Wright and Rogers returned to Missouri in their rental car, thinking they had successfully hidden their actions. Meanwhile, Mark received worrying news on the morning of June 29. His wife, Dr. Teresa, had not shown up for work. Worried about Teresa not being around, Mark called a family friend, Dr. Mark Petrites, to check on her at home. Using the garage code Mark provided, Dr. Petrites entered the home and discovered Teresa lying face down in a pool of blood, with a hammer next to her body. She was cold to the touch, and there were evident signs of a violent struggle. The brutal murder of Dr. Teresa shocked the Bonita Springs community. As a respected physician and mother, her death left many people in disbelief. Friends and patients expressed horror over the violent act against someone who had devoted her life to helping others, marking a tragic loss for the community. After Teresa was found dead, law enforcement launched an investigation. Detectives interviewed her family, friends, colleagues to learn more about her life and any possible threats. They also sought tips from the community, stressing the importance of any information that could help identify the person responsible. Investigators examined various aspects of Teresa's professional and personal life. Initially, they looked into people who had interacted with her or might have held grudges against her, but they did not find any immediate leads. Nearly 2 months later, a major breakthrough occurred when law enforcement received a tip from a source in Missouri. This tip revealed that Wright had confessed to someone about his role in Teresa's murder. Consequently, detectives concentrated their efforts on Wright. They traveled to Missouri to investigate further and gather evidence linking he to the crime. In August 2015, Wright and his accomplice, Rogers, were arrested in Missouri for their involvement in Teresa's murder. Many were surprised by the arrest since neither man was from the local area. A detailed investigation revealed important evidence linking them to the crime. Police carried out search warrants at their homes and collected various items, including clothing and other materials that had been purchased shortly before Teresa's death. The investigation gained traction after detectives received a tip that directed them to Wright. This led to a deeper look into his relationship with Mark, raising suspicions about their possible participation in a murder-for-hire plot. The evidence collected during the arrest was crucial for the trials of both men involved. Initially, Wright denied having any connection to Teresa's murder during police questioning. However, as investigators presented him with evidence, he eventually admitted his involvement. Wright acknowledged that he agreed to carry out the murder for at least $100,000 from Teresa's life insurance policy. In December 2015, Wright accepted a plea deal with prosecutors to avoid a possible capital murder charge. As part of the plea agreement, he confessed to his involvement in the murder and agreed to testify against his co-defendants, Mark Sievers and Jimmy Ray Rogers. In return for his cooperation, he received a 25-year prison sentence for second-degree murder. This deal required him to provide significant assistance to the prosecution in their cases against Mark and Rogers. Wright confessed that he and Rogers traveled from Missouri to Florida with the intention of killing Teresa as part of a plan created by Mark. He revealed that Mark first presented this idea during his wedding in May 2015, citing his financial struggles and the need to eliminate Teresa as a solution. This confession was crucial in proving Mark's direct role in the murder plot. By cooperating with law enforcement, Wright played a key role in the investigation, shedding light on the conspiracy that led to Teresa's tragic death. The investigation uncovered a series of text messages exchanged between Mark and Wright, which clearly outlined their plan to murder Teresa for financial gain and highlighted Mark's direct involvement in organizing the crime. Prosecutors claimed that Mark hired Wright and Rogers to kill Teresa due to financial pressures and fears of losing custody of their daughters. Court documents released during this time revealed serious issues in Mark and Teresa's marriage, such as financial struggles and possible infidelity. The evidence showed that Mark could benefit significantly from Teresa's life insurance policies. On December 4, 2015, shortly after Teresa's funeral, Mark was arrested. He was taken into custody by law enforcement from the Lee County Sheriff's Office. As investigators worked to reconstruct the timeline of events leading up to Teresa's murder, they became confident that they had enough evidence to charge him with first-degree murder. Mark's arrest shifted the case's focus onto him as a key figure in the conspiracy. Initially cooperative with investigators, he started to distance himself as more evidence against him was gathered, resulting in a complicated legal battle. After Mark was arrested, investigators stepped up their efforts to gather more evidence regarding the murder of Dr. Teresa. A key part of this investigation was examining digital evidence, especially GPS data from the rental car. This GPS information provided a detailed record of their route and was essential for creating a timeline of their activities before the murder. The data showed they left Missouri, arriving in Bonita Springs, Florida. Wright even posted a Yelp review for a dumpling restaurant along the way. The GPS device was also linked to an email address belonging to Jimmy Ray Rogers, a close friend of Wright's who had his own criminal record. Surveillance footage from a Florida Walmart showed both men in the area at the time of Teresa's murder. The exact timestamps indicated they reached the Sievers' home around 6 a.m., which matched the timeline of Teresa's murder. Additionally, investigators reviewed cell phone records that showed communication between Mark and Wright. These records revealed regular contact leading up to the murder. The fact that Mark and Wright used prepaid phones indicated they were trying to avoid detection, but investigators managed to trace their communications effectively. This digital evidence was crucial in supporting witness testimonies and clarifying how the murder was plotted and carried out. As trial preparations began, prosecutors focused on assembling a solid case against both Curtis Wayne Wright, Mark Sievers, and Jimmy Ray Rogers. A key piece of evidence emerged from surveillance footage at a Walmart, where Wright and Rogers were recorded buying items later connected to the murder of Dr. Teresa. The video showed them shopping without attempting to hide their identities while purchasing trash bags, flushable wet wipes, black towels, and a lock-picking kit. These purchases were crucial in proving their intention to commit murder and to dispose of the evidence afterward. Additionally, investigators found fibers from a blue jumpsuit that Rogers had discarded along Highway 47 in Missouri. Forensic analysis showed that these fibers matched those on Teresa's clothing at the crime scene, providing a direct connection between Rogers and the murder. This physical evidence strengthened the prosecution's case by confirming that both men were present during the crime. The prosecution collected digital evidence, including GPS data from the rental car driven by Wright and Rogers, surveillance footage, and forensic findings, built a strong case against the defendants. As the trial dates approached, the prosecution prepared to present this evidence, aiming to prove not only the guilt of Wright and Rogers but also to show Mark's role in planning his wife's murder. After Jimmy Ray Rogers was convicted, Mark Sievers faced trial in December 2019. The prosecution prepared a case that relied significantly on the testimony of Curtis Wayne Wright, who had accepted a plea deal. Wright provided essential information about how Mark orchestrated the murder plot, shedding light on the conspiracy that resulted in Teresa's death. During the trial, prosecutors presented various pieces of evidence linking Mark to the crime. This included text messages exchanged between Mark and Wright that discussed the murder and the financial motivations behind it. The prosecution argued that Mark's desire for financial gain from Teresa's life insurance policies was a primary motive for orchestrating her murder. The defense argued that there was no reliable evidence linking Mark to the murder. They pointed out that the state had only established that Wright and Rogers, not Mark, were responsible for Teresa's death. To weaken Wright's testimony, the defense highlighted his criminal history, which included several felony convictions and mental health issues, such as bipolar disorder. They claimed that Wright had a reason to lie in order to get a lighter sentence for himself. Furthermore, the defense suggested that Wright might have been influenced by law enforcement during his questioning, implying he was just repeating a story given to him by the investigator. They also noted that Wright had not taken a polygraph test, which could have either supported or damaged his credibility as a witness. The defense wrapped up its arguments by asking jurors to doubt the credibility of Wright's statements and to note the absence of direct evidence connecting Mark to the crime. Throughout the trial, jurors were shown consistent forensic evidence, such as fibers from a blue jumpsuit discarded by Rogers that matched those found on Teresa's body. Despite this, the defense continued to argue that Mark was not involved in either planning or carrying out the murder. The prosecution effectively showed that Mark had not only planned the murder but had also enlisted Wright and Rogers to help carry it out. After a brief deliberation of about 4 hours, the jury found Mark Sievers guilty of first-degree premeditated murder and conspiracy to commit murder. After the verdict, Mark entered the sentencing phase, where jurors would decide on his punishment. This decision depended on whether they identified aggravating factors that justified a death sentence or mitigating circumstances that could lead to a lesser penalty. Mark was convicted of first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder, and the sentencing phase began on December 11, 2019, shortly after the verdict was announced. The prosecution aimed to prove two main aggravating factors: that the murder was executed in a cold, calculated, premeditated way, and that it was motivated by financial gain. They presented evidence from the trial, including Wright's testimony about Mark's role in planning the murder and the financial incentives involved. Victim impact statements were also shared to illustrate the emotional effects of Teresa's murder on her family and community. The defense sought to provide evidence that would reduce Mark's culpability by emphasizing his lack of a criminal history and his relationships with his daughters. Family members testified about his role as a father and husband, painting a positive picture of him. However, they struggled to counter the strong evidence put forth by the prosecution. On January 3, 2020, after careful consideration, the jury unanimously recommended the death penalty for Mark Sievers. They concluded that the evidence showed he had committed the murder with cold, calculated premeditation, although they found insufficient evidence for the claim that he acted for financial gain. During the sentencing hearing, Mark spoke to the court, insisting on his innocence, expressing his love for Teresa and their daughters. He pleaded for mercy, asking to avoid the death penalty. Despite his pleas and the defense's arguments for a lighter sentence, Judge Bruce Kyle sentenced him to death for orchestrating Teresa's murder. The judge highlighted the importance of the jury's recommendation and pointed out that Mark's actions showed a complete disregard for human life. In addition to the death sentence for first-degree murder, he received a 30-year prison sentence for conspiracy to commit murder, which will be served consecutively. The sentencing phase is complete, and Mark Sievers is now dealing with major legal hurdles as he prepares to appeal his conviction and his sentence. Currently, he is on death row at the Union Correctional Institution in Florida while these appeals are underway. After his sentencing, Mark has consistently claimed his innocence, insisting that he did not arrange the murder of his wife, Teresa. Mark remains on death row, but continues to protest the verdict. In February 2025, a judge granted him an evidentiary hearing, which will determine whether he is granted a new trial. The tragic case of Dr. Teresa Sievers is a heartbreaking tale of betrayal and greed, a testament to how love and trust can be corrupted by dark motives. A devoted mother and a talented physician, Teresa became the victim of a murder plot orchestrated by the husband she once trusted. Secrets kept behind closed doors, combined with financial pressures and moral turpitude, led to a tragic end that took the life of a precious human being and left indelible pain for her family, friends, and the Bonita Springs community. The case not only exposed the brutality of the crime, but also served as a sobering reminder of the consequences of greed and a lack of compassion. While Mark Sievers faces a death sentence and continues to appeal, Teresa's story remains a reminder that justice, even when served, cannot fully undo the damage caused by crime.